I've forgotten more than I think I've learned, just because there's a lot of stuff. These rabbit holes are deep. So these people can't be expected to filter all this out when they just came into this, and it's just, I think this is a distraction ultimately, man. I think the whole conspiracy realm is turned into a massive distraction. And
so what's the end game? Let's kind of transition a little bit here before the first hour is up. If this is all distraction, what's kind of the end game? What do you see as the end game? Because for the most part, within truther circles, even though they were kind of studying a lot, I don't think anyone saw this coming down the way it came down this year so far. They might have picked one or two, but really, I mean, this is in a whole new territory where we're like, what's happening next? I don't think anyone really knows, but it's good to kind of look at things and say, hey, what do you think is happening? I mean, I definitely think that we're going to escalate continually up until November for sure. But the question is, what's going to happen next?
Well, let me tell you something, because I was just looking into this and trying to figure out for myself what my idea was. And I have a feeling that this is not going to end well. So I went through and I found this article from 2012, okay? And it's called The 4 Steps for American Subversion. And it's written by a former KGB agent. Bezmenov. Yuri Bezmenov is his name. He's got some videos on YouTube, but they're like older, from like 80s and 90s, and I think there's possibly some from early 2000s. But he's a Soviet, he did Soviet espionage, and he talks about how espionage is not what you think it is. It's all about subversion, right? You get inside and you make them destroy themselves on their own from within. And it's just about, the first step is demoralization. It says this process it takes about 15 to 30 years to perform, like maybe a generation, they say. Mm-hmm. And during this stage, the moral fiber and the integrity of the country is put into question, creating doubt in the minds of the people. Manipulation of the media and academia is required to influence younger people. And as the younger generation embraces new values like Marxism and stuff, the older generation slowly loses control, and again, true facts no longer matter, and they're creating new perceptions. Okay. Then the second step is destabilization, and the purpose of this step is to change the status quo, particularly the country's economy, the foreign relations, the defense systems, and their intent is to create massive government society and becoming like intrusive into the lives of its citizens, and then they said this step takes about 2 to 5 years to make happen, right? Mm-hmm. The third step is crisis. This is a major step lasting up to 6 weeks. It involves revolutionary change of power. They've been trying to do this for a while, I would say. Yeah. They've been trying to assassinate Trump ever since he was in there, man. But and it says this is where you have like cataclysmic events that upset and divide the country, create panic amongst the citizens. They did this in Egypt and Libya. They do it in a lot of countries, man, that they're trying to overthrow. But you upstate the, Constitution, you circumvent the Constitution, and you alter the checks and balances of government, right? The fourth step, the final stage, is called normalization, right? The new normal is the phrase they're trying to get us to say right now.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, listen to this, man. This is from 1985. The final stage is where the population finally acquiesces and begins to assimilate into communism. This can take up to 2 decades to complete. But he claims that it was the first step was completed in 85. And he said, I think he said it was completed by 2012. So, I mean, dude, we're looking at, I think I listened to one of his lectures, and right at the end, he said, when you're to the point of normalization, there's only 2 ways that you can break this, or there's only 2 outcomes. And one was civil war, or a savior figure arises.
Right, and that's where I see it going too. Is all those things.
Sorry, I was just saying that's super scary.
No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see where this is going, like in game wise. I've really been trying to put this together. We've had this concept, and I almost think that the 1984 like aspect is something that in the in the end times like community, we've always like tried to fit that like 1984 ideology into what we're going to see in the end times with the mark of the beast and all that. Like, you know, this gray, and, you know, the media controls everything, and you know, they're removing history and all this other kind of stuff. And we've kind of like looked at that as that's the enemy and that's the game plan. But what if that was a plant into the minds of the community? Like, if you look into anything about him, when he the author of 1984, was it Orwell or
George Orwell?
Yeah. He was into the esoteric. I mean, he was tied to a lot of things that we would look at today as being, you know, like the occult in nature.
Yeah.
So, and then he comes out with his 1984, and then he's, you know, like, but we never tied him to like being a whistleblower. So what was he putting out, you know, putting that information out there? What I see when I look at Revelation is everything that is there. People aren't forced, you know, like to get the mark and stuff like that. It's something that they want.
Correct.
It's like a whole society of people that like are craving this. And we've seen this time and time again with the Hegelian dialectic, right? It's they create a problem, then we react, and then they have a solution. Yeah. So what I'm seeing with this is everything that we're seeing, you can't institute a one world monetary system when the under Trump, we had the biggest booming economy and the largest world economy in the United States. We were still controlling the markets. We were taking back from China. Trump was going over to Korea. I mean, squashing pretty much all of the major problems that the United States was dealing with.
Correct.
We're the biggest economic power in the world. And then all of a sudden, everything starts falling apart. Like, we go from super highs to being super low, where, you know, you have to look, they have to create the problem before that they can give the solution. So everything that we're seeing now, the tearing down the statues, the education system's in shambles right now because they don't know how they're going to teach the kids. I mean, everything is falling apart, and people are getting to the breaking point where they're saying, we need answers, we need a fix, we need something better than what we're at now. And it's been this is what's been crazy for me to see, is how quickly they were able to make the largest economic power in the world fold.
No, I know.
Like
we all knew they needed to take down America. Like, we all knew this, that really America was always standing in their way, right? We were always like, how are they going to do it? They're going to come and take all our guns. Like, we were always thinking it was going to be draconian, where really the way they're doing it, you know, is not draconian in that sense. It's actually, it's all done under fear, but we would have expected maybe, you know, war or something. We wouldn't have expected it like this. You know, just everything unraveling. I mean, the police, I tell you the truth, I would have never seen people wanting to actually abolish and completely eradicate the police this quick. I mean, we're not talking about a bunch of yahoos on the street. We're talking mayors, governors. We're talking people high up that are like, yep, sounds like a good idea. Let's get rid of the police.
And those people were put there in power.
Sure.
I mean, this has been a long plan running, and basically they've lined up all of these little, you know, these little dice, and they're just, or not dice, but these little dominoes, and they set it in motion, you know. Now this is not any, like, because grand scale wise, God has already he's already got control of all this. Like, this has all been part of his plan because it was foretold 2,000 years ago to John the Revelator, right? But these guys think that they've got something going here. And so they've laid up all of these different things to fall in place the way that they want.
Well, George Floyd was like a catalyst. I mean, if you really kind of go back to when it really exploded, I'm talking more this narrative, this new narrative, the riots and all that, because quite honestly, the lockdowns and all that stuff, the protests that were happening were done more under the Republican arm, which were peaceful, right? There were no burning of buildings. There were no riots, right? No one was getting beaten up. It was actually pretty civilized. It was only until this catalyst of the George Floyd, which was a despicable thing that happened, but they used that, in my opinion, as a catalyst to say, hey, now's the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everything's weakened right now. Everyone, it's a good, like, it was a perfect time for them because they were sitting in the wings going, we just need a catalyst. We need some sort of an event, because to them, it wasn't just an American thing. It was a global, worldwide thing. Because it just, I mean, I've never seen anything span so fast. Like, it had all been planned. There's no doubt, like, a lot of agencies, but a lot of times when you look into it, it's not even just huge agencies, although they're there, but a lot of grassroots, you know, organizations, you know, that are working with Black Lives Matter, right? They're all kind of waiting in the wings and they're saying, this is what we need to do. But in the meantime, let's get professors in here. Let's get people in power. Let's get people in this place. Like, let's get it all, kind of all the chess pieces together.
Yeah, and then and even if it wasn't George Floyd, it would have been the next one that happened, or the next one after that.
Correct.
They set these things up where it's like, okay, we're just going to wait for this event to happen because sooner or later there's going to be. I mean, they've tried to push the Ebola, they tried to push the swine flu, the bird flu. They're just waiting for the right one that they could go, okay, we're going to start getting. We got all this stuff lined up, and this is something that Trump came in when he first came in that he got so much flack for this. Was he decommissioned or took away some of the heads and like tore down some of this like infectious disease control that they had? That was like there was a part of the task force for disease control that Obama had instituted, and he kind of dismantled that, and he got a bunch of flack for it right before this hit. And it's kind of like, well, what were they preparing for? Like if they already had this thing set up under Obama, and you see this throughout all of the presidents, each one has initiated something in their presidency that was the like part of these dominoes, and it was like it doesn't matter Republican, left, right, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can vote however you want to. The way that I look at it is we're talking about all this stuff with the child trafficking, all of this stuff ties together because a lot of these politicians are tied to people like Jeffrey Epstein, and they're in the pocket of somebody who has photos of them doing something. And so when it comes time that they need something passed or they need something pushed through, they say, hey, remember those photos we have of you with this 11-year-old little girl?
Yeah.
Well, I need you to vote yes or no on this, And so it doesn't really matter. They have enough people in position, in power to do what they want to do to enable these. And this goes back to, which was funny because Ian and I did a show one day we were talking about Q. It was our big Q Expo show, and God hit me with Revelation 17:17, which basically was saying that God put it in the hearts of these men to give their power over to the beast, so that His plan would be fulfilled. And to me, like, we're going to see all of this happening because this has to happen before the Messiah can return.
Sure,
these are the dominoes that are lined up that it's going to happen. So, ultimately what I believe, I think we're going to see is this utopian society come out the other side of it. It's going to be an answer to all the questions and all the problems. Of course, we're going to see more problems because we're not there.
But doesn't
yet.
civil war need to occur? Like, for example, I always looked at, this is why I personally think that, yes, they're trying aggressively, but I think they're going to be thwarted. And I'm not saying, oh, Trump's going to come in and save the day. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying in God's timetable, this is kind of like an expose to kind of show, people kind of both sides what's going on. But I personally think that it's going to go the opposite direction. Because for me, in order for like the beast system to be rolled out, it's almost like a unanimous worldwide kind of hypnotized state where they're like, yes, we want this, right? We want to march with the New World Order kind of thing, like the new, So for me, I'm seeing less globalization. I am seeing more and more localization happening with an event. I personally believe we could be witnessing a Tower of Babel 2.0. In a sense that things are actually going to get thwarted. It's almost like a shaking is taking place. Of course, they're evil. They're trying to do their thing. They're aggressively trying, but God's in control. He laughs at their plans, right? So I think God sometimes likes to have a bit of fun, unless you believe that if Trump, doesn't win and they just railroad, I would be right along you guys and say, you know what, we're headed that way. Because let's just say that Trump wins. Doesn't matter where you stand on this issue. Let's say Trump wins. We know what's going to happen. There's going to be cities burning. There's going to be riots. People are going to lose their flipping mind. And meanwhile, is Trump going to change, or is he going to basically just be the same that he's been the first 4 years? I personally believe that he'll be the same. I tell people all the time, look, you know what you're going to get with Trump. Do you want to take a chance on what happens when you abolish the police? Because here's the thing. Do you think that they're going to actually get rid of the police, or do you think they're going to replace them with something new?
It depends. It depends on how they roll it. I really do think November is going to be a big determining factor on how they're going to swing this, because ultimately if they go through, if we get another coronavirus roll through, which they're predicting,
which we will, we'll get a second wave, guarantee it. Guarantee it.
They're saying that we could be wearing masks for the next couple of years.
I know they are.
It's like,
yep.
But if they get to this with a point where you can't go to a school, kids aren't even going to school to go to school, let alone are you going to go there to vote? They were been trying since the first rollout they were talking about how are we going to let people vote? Are we going to do mail out flyers or whatever? That could be so easily.
Hold that thought. We're going to go to a break. We're going to be back just after a few messages here. Don't go anywhere. You're on with Ian Chadrick and Aaron Sampson, and we're going deep, and we're going into the deep dive in 2020 with both of them. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Good morning. Good morning. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interests. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and you will once again be fighting for our freedom. Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
Welcome to the home of weaponized talk radio, where the only currency we traffic in is information. See, you didn't find us by mistake. You were meant to be here. Tell them, Hawk.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Independence Day. Hope everybody has a safe day, safe evening for all the servicemen and women who have so proudly embraced our flag. So making the ultimate sacrifice to bring us and keep us free, because freedom is not free. We must always endeavor and we must always fight to maintain that freedom. And don't forget, that's why we're here doing what we do.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. Ever.
All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back to Celebrate Truth Radio. This is Hour 2. I'm your host, Robbie Davidson. My guests this evening are Aaron Sampson and Ian Chadrick. So Ian and Sampson have been laying out their views on what's happening, and these guys go really deep and understand a lot that's going on, and I really respect their opinions because they don't just jump on things. They take the time to really research it, to really let things digest. And you guys, before the break, were kind of talking about the way you see things going down. And again, remember, I'm just throwing this out. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong, but I'm always looking at the two different ways this can go. If it does go the way you see it, but also if there's a curveball, what does that mean? So again, I'll let you continue before I cut you off, at the top of the hour. I think you were speaking, Sampson?
Yeah. This is just, I think the Civil War is a possible idea. I think if it gets to the point where they continue to push and push and push in America, I think people will only allow so much with the current generations of people we have. But mind you, COVID, it goes through and wipes out a lot of our 65 and older communities. If this goes through again, if this is meant to go through again and take out the what's left of the greatest generation and some of the high end of the baby boomer generation, we're going to lose a lot of conservatives in that.
It's true.
A lot of the people who are, steadfast patriots for this country, like we were talking before the show, and I said, you guys remember about 10 years ago, the Tea Party movement blew up here in the United States. And what happened to that? I mean, it kind of just vanished.
Just fizzled.
We had Obama as president for 8 years, and so either we have sleeping dogs waiting.
Yeah. Where are they? Where do you think they are? Like all these militias, all these patriots. I mean, literally, they're watching this unfold. They're seeing actually department after department. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but the latest one was Seattle, that they've actually voted to defund them 50%, which means that 1,100 police officers are going to be let go. The police are already crying out and saying this is a tragedy. I mean, crime is about to go rampant in the city. I mean, this isn't just one incident. I mean, you're seeing this in New York. You're seeing this in Minneapolis. I mean, how many cities until people rise up and say, wait a minute, this is scary. And what's scary the most to me is if all of a sudden there's nobody kind of holding that back. If for whatever reason Trump loses, and we know we can get into Biden because he's fun to talk about. We know that it's going to be the vice president is the one to watch because he's not going to run anything, right? And whoever that VP is, they're going to have the ear of the Black Lives Matter, Antifa. I mean, you name it. But these guys are looking at straight up communism. We're not dealing with like socialist versus, this. We're looking now at the two paradigms of like straight on communism. Would you guys agree? As far as what the other side are looking at?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll direct Ian because Ian knows more. He did a big study on this. There is this ideology that this NESARA thing could be rolled out if the economy, all it really takes is the economy to crash.
That's true.
That's all we really need. And then it can go any different way. But this NESARA thing that's been going around, I just saw an article saying that JFK Jr. Would be a possible candidate for the president if NESARA and JSARA goes in. Ian, you want to talk about that?
Maybe, yeah. I'm not even familiar with that, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners aren't really familiar with who that is and what that's about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the things I did want to mention before we move on is that this whole masking thing, this COVID mask requirement.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about masks.
You guys
we'll get into that.
Do you remember The Lord of the Flies? Do you remember that book?
Yep.
You ever read it? Well, I know how to read it when I was a kid, but it taught us that covering up the face like represented like the hiding of the civilized self and the dawning of like the savagery. When the kids started being bad and like killing each other, they wore like the masks of the animals over their faces to kind of like hide themselves. I see society doing this right now. I mean, it's a deeper metaphor, I guess, but it. Leading up to the whole thing with the NESARA JSARA thing, I definitely think that we are watching the rise of the second beast right now. We're watching and I know this is a little bit of a different concept, and I don't want to start off. I don't want people to get the idea that I'm a doom and gloomer, because I'm not at all. I believe that the greatest time that the church and the body of Christ has ever seen is right in front of us or upon us. And we just have to see it, right? We just don't see it. Our perception's been clouded. And that's what this whole magic spell's about, right? Clouding the mind, because we need to look at this from God's eyes, right? How does God view this situation?
So do you believe we're at the beginning of the Great Tribulation?
No, not exactly.
Okay.
I believe that we're entering we're at least in the birth pangs. Okay? That's what I would say. But I would say that I think that the unfolding of Revelation hinges upon the prayers of the saints. Okay. And we are in control of the timeline. Just like Moses and Aaron were in control of bringing the plagues on Egypt.
Correct.
Right? We're going to be in control of opening the bowls of wrath. And it's going to be the prayers of the saints that bring this thing to where it gets to be. But I'm not trying. I'm just looking at this and trying to figure it out in my head as I watch these things unfold. I don't want to try to nail things down and say, this is it. We're in the Civil War. It's all over.
This is your opinion. It's your opinion. It's not thus saith the Lord. This is thus, saith Ian.
Yeah, and I believe that the church is going to thrive. See, the scriptures, a lot of people talk about the Great Awakening, right? This is a big thing. We're talking about this Great Awakening. Well, the scriptures talk about a great falling away, as well. Correct. But no one's talking about that they could possibly be hand in hand at the same exact time. A great falling away and a Great Awakening all at the same time.
Correct.
Right? because I think that's what's happening. I think that God is literally put a dividing line down. And, and just looking at the reset, it's like he's been telling us this whole time that we have a lot, especially Americans. I'm just going to say Western society.
Sure.
We have a lot of comfort, and we have a lot of idols.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we've been putting a lot of stuff, even if you're a Christian, you put a lot of stuff before, or you prioritize it over your faith, big time.
Sure.
And God's been asking you, all of us, to get rid of it. And we couldn't. And because he loves us, out of a move of immense grace, he just takes it all away. Immediately.
Yeah.
Suddenly.
Yeah.
And then he says, stop building your own kingdoms and start building mine. And are we going to listen to him, or are we are complaining that we want the old way back? Correct. I don't think we're ever going back. I don't like the new normal that they want, right? But I don't like to be content. I don't want to ever be content.
Sure.
I want God to put me in uncomfortable positions so that I have to lean on him. He wants that too. And so I think this is like the perfect scenario for the church when it says, if you have eyes to see, for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Mm-hmm. I think this is a moment where those will come in handy because the Holy Spirit's telling us this is your moment, right? Hold of this promise and start running with it, because the gospel was always our mission and it never went away, and it should be our mission now, no matter how bad tribulation gets. I think Paul says in Galatians that he's already dead. He's already died to this world. Yeah. The moment he took the cross, he died to this world, and he's already been through tribulation. That's it. He will be forever in tribulation for the rest of his life because he's in the shadow of the cross. I think that that's what we need to look at, what's happening, because there's so much potential. People, especially right now, are hungry for the gospel, man. They're seeing, so many people are seeing revelation type things happening.
Yes.
Even people that have just heard of it. They're not Christians. They just heard of apocalypse, or, they know that Revelation is the last book of the Bible, and it's, when all the crazy stuff happens. Sure. And so many people are coming up to you now and being like, hey, man, I know you read the Bible. What's going on? Are we in the last days? They want to know. There's an urgency. And what are you going to tell them? Yeah, you better get your crap together. Start prepping. You know what I mean? Or are you going to tell them like, hey, you don't have to be afraid of this, because I know my God is peace. We had a pastor from a vineyard in India, and he said something so awesome. He said when he was before he was saved, he was into so much stuff and his life was chaos, and he said he did everything he could to chase down peace, or what was that what he said, Aaron? He said he chased after peace for his whole life. He was chasing peace, but once he found Jesus, peace chased him. And I think that's what he said. Is that what he said, Aaron?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and I was like, I never heard it put that way, but I can definitely vouch for that. That's for sure. When peace comes inside and lives in you, you don't fear this stuff like everybody else. Yeah, it's a little crazy. It's chaos, right? That's meant to shake you up. But you have a different mindset. You're looking at things with a kingdom mindset, right? Like, where's the opportunity here for me to be able to share my faith and be a comfort to somebody? Because I know the answers. I've studied conspiracy theories forever, but sometimes I feel like the more I know, the more it's a crutch.
Correct.
Because now I have too much in my mind, and it's hard for me to make decisions because I'm over-analyzing everything because I'm trying to figure it.
Do you think pride sets in sometimes when you get into the whole truther thing a little too much? Do you think pride can set in?
Oh, absolutely, because you don't want to come to the fact that terms with the fact that you just wasted all your time. But I did a course, and I'll be teaching this course again. Aaron went through it this last time. It's called Freedom, and it's a 12-week Bible study, but it pretty much breaks down, from the garden. Adam and Eve were faced with the choice of whether every day when they woke up they were going to eat from the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, and we're faced with that same choice every day, and we have the same exact issues that they had, and we're but the thing is, how much of our life involves chasing that tree of knowledge or eating from the tree of knowledge. And like when you start to really go deep in and explore your own life and the things that are in there, and you start breaking free from some of these things, these addictions that are holding you, and you start to reprioritize and clean yourself out, it really does. It frees you to be able to do the things and hear the Father and do the things that are more important. And, you know, I had several addictions broke off me. My wife and I, our relationship is a lot stronger than it has been. Mm-hmm. And it was nothing specific. It was like we just both noticed it. We were like, hey, we're doing really good. Mm-hmm. You know, when we didn't go in praying like we're about to get divorced or anything like that. It was just kind of one of them things. So you're just like, hey, we haven't done this in a long time. We haven't fought in a long. We're doing really good. Like mm-hmm. something, you know. And there's so much of that stuff that's happening now, even today. And this is, you know, I've done it twice now in the last 2 years, and I just love the course. And it really does. It's eye-opening. But for me, it was huge because I realized that this conquest of figuring things out was a quest for knowledge. Mm-hmm. And it gets in the way of your faith. It does. Yeah. I don't care if you think. I used to justify and say, well, I am well-rounded in conspiracies. Like I know how they all connect, and I can see this big picture. And yeah. But it didn't help me pay my bills. It didn't help me do anything. It didn't help me be a better father. It didn't help me be a better husband. It didn't help me be a better friend, really.
Correct.
You know, unless we're talking about conspiracies and I'm on your team and it's a contest. But yeah. You know, but it's ultimately it's like this is a quest for knowledge, and when yeah. God asks me to do something, He wants me to walk by faith. Yeah. And He doesn't. And if I know too much, then I start to play these games with Him, like, yeah, not right now. Like I'll wait a little bit and see if this happens, or you know. And yeah. He's like, I don't care. You know, I just want you to do this. I'm going to do all the work. I just want you to take the first step. But a lot of times, having all the knowledge keeps you from doing that. So,
no, absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's spot on.
I think that's exactly what I think that a lot of church people are really struggling with this whole thing right now. Your churches are doing crazy stuff. You know, I mean, I was shocked to learn that while, you know, the churches were closed down for that initial. I know some didn't, but most did for at least mm-hmm. a little bit, mm-hmm. weeks, trying to figure out what was really going on. You know, and I don't blame these pastors because they don't know. They don't have time. When you're leading a flock and you're being a shepherd, like good shepherd, correct. You don't have enough time to go down rabbit holes and figure out that the WHO is a bunch of sneaky turds and they're trying to pull one on you. And it's, you know.
Speaking of which, what did you think about Trump actually completely disbanding from them? I mean, before he was cutting funding, now he's completely separating from the WHO. How does that fit into the whole thing when he's separating from the World Health Organization? Just as a little sidetrack, I'm just curious where you're at with that.
I have no idea what Trump is doing, dude. I really don't. He does the craziest stuff, and you're like, okay, why is this a thing?
Wouldn't it be easier, though, to get control of America, like by him just saying, World Health Organization, good, great, listen to them. You know, like, to me, like, all these people that are like, Trump is just 100% puppet. If he's a puppet, he's one of the wiliest, stubbornest puppets I've ever seen. I'm sorry, you know. So sure enough, I'll give you that. If you want to say he's a puppet, but he's not a normal puppet. I'll tell you that.
Well, here, let me tell you something. Let me explain something, because I think there's a lot of people out there that want to say that either Trump's a puppet, and you know, there's the Christians out there that are saying he's he's God's man, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if he's God's man. I mean, I know that he's the man that's in there right now, sure. And I trust that the Father, you know, is in control.
Who sets up the presidents, kings, and rulers? Who is it? What does the Bible say? Who is the one that actually does that? God. I know. Okay. So we have to at least give him that. Regardless, we have to say God's the one that chose Trump to be in there. He did the same thing for Obama.
You know, the prophecy about him being Cyrus, right? Yep. Cyrus wasn't a Christian king.
No, not at all.
He never
Trump's not a Christian either. Trump's not a Christian either. I don't care what anyone says.
We don't know if he is. We don't know if he is, because you know, I'm not going to say that.
Name me one Christian. Name me one Christian. I don't care if they became Christian like yesterday, and you went to them and said, "Hey, by the way, have you been reading the Bible?" Yeah, I love it. What do you like better, the Old Testament or the New Testament? And they come back to you and say, "Love Testaments. Love them both. Love Testaments." Honestly, dude, he's not a Christian. I'm telling you right now. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that God can't use him. It doesn't take away the fact that God can use certain things like, in his being and who he created him to be. That's not to mention that God's not tugging on his heart and that there might be a really beautiful end to that story. But to sit there and say that Trump, all he's doing it because God, is his main motivator. No, man, it's politics, man.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I can't tell you where his soul's going because I don't know. I wasn't there if he made a conversion or whatever. I don't know. But I do know that if you're not a believer, okay, and you're not being guided by the Holy Spirit, then you're a puppet for Satan.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you're a puppet for the enemy.
Sure.
Because the only protection you have is the Holy Spirit and that covenant that was just made, right? You became
Let's go back to Cyrus. Go back to Cyrus, the example. Go back to Cyrus, because again, remember, he would have been kind of a puppet of Satan, but God was using him. So maybe go into that example like you were just talking about.
Well, okay. So here's one of the things I like to say. So I heard this from a pastor, and it really spoke to me. He asked the church to pray for him because he said he started weeping on the stage, and it was a really awkward moment. But he said, "I need everyone to pray for me because I'm one bad decision away from ruining my life." And everybody was super serious. They were like, "Well, what the heck is this guy into?" And then he turned it on us and said, "That's what everyone should be praying every single night, because every one of you and every one of us is one decision away from ruining your life."
Wow, that's profound, man. That's real profound.
And and I have went through a bad divorce, and it was all, crazy stuff going on in that. But I can identify with that whole how one thing that you did could change your entire world. And the shame, that's what keeps you, That's what will, normally you do one thing and you could say, "Oh man, that's crazy. I'm sorry I did that." You repent and stuff. But sometimes the enemy can get you with that shame. And we were talking before with how they control and blackmail these people with their sex stuff, the pedophile stuff. And ultimately, it's the tactic that the enemy has used ever since the beginning of time, right? Shaming you.
Yeah.
Hey, you don't want this to come out, so you better be quiet, or you better do my thing, or this is going to come out. People, think this of you, or, and it's the shame. And that's, you got to, that's the oldest trick in the book, seriously. I mean, if you think about it, when Adam and Eve sinned, they covered themselves. The shame was the first evidence of their sin, right?
Sure.
And I mean, we all have that ability to make a bad decision. And so, can Trump make good decisions? Yes, he can. And I'm praying that he does. I'm praying that he has divine favor, because it's the scriptures say whether it's a good ruler or not, we should be praying for them.
Yeah.
We pray blessings on our enemies. I know half of the people out there that claim to be Christians aren't praying blessings on your enemy.
Well, I had to pray about Obama, because seriously, I remember back in the day, I hated him. I hated him. And I used to pray, I'm like, "God, you have to take away this immense hate." Like, I hated Obama. And again, I didn't like him, but I didn't need to hate him. And hating him was consuming me. And I remember praying about it. But again, we shouldn't hate anyone. I don't care how bad they are. Again, hate in our heart is not a good thing.
Right. Because they can make a turnaround. And if you start to cut them off and say they're unredeemable, then, I mean, your heart is more in question than their salvation, I think.
Correct.
Because you've now drawn the line. And I think we just all need a lot more grace for each other. And I think especially during this time, we can't be focused on who the bad guys are and getting justice. We have to be focused on
that no man should boast. We can't boast in our salvation. Yeah. We can't boast and say, "Oh, look at us, look at me, look at," and I agree with that. Like, that's why we have to kind of have that attitude. It's almost like going back to what would Jesus do? I mean, Jesus loved on the sinners. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously he didn't condone what they were doing, and he talked about, hell a lot more than he did about heaven. I mean, he talked about repenting and all these sort of things. But it's not you just love everyone, but the idea of really hating these people, hate. What would happen if people just really prayed? I mean, for the evil and these type of things. So I think it's really good that you're bringing that up, and that pastor mentioning that we're one decision away from completely destroying our life. That's so true, so true.
Yeah, speaking of what would Jesus do, Robbie, you just said that a second ago. I was trying to find a good point to transition this.
Sure.
One of the things that I've mentioned before, and I think it's pivotal to understand as a Christian and being somebody who's supposed to be following Yeshua, Jesus, right, is when Jesus walked the earth in Israel, he was facing all of the similar conditions we're facing today. And if you look at the Roman occupation, you could say that that was like the oppressive police force we see today. We got COVID-19, they had leprosy, right? You had the Roman occupation, which would literally and could literally shut down their temple worship at any point in time. We got shut down churches, right? Everything that they were going through at that time, Jesus was going through. I mean, I can go through a whole litany of different things, and we can compare and contrast. But did Jesus focus on any of those social issues, any of those economic issues, any of those things? No, he didn't, because he knew the hearts of men. When he walked by a Roman soldier, he could have told you if that Roman soldier was ever going to, find salvation or whatever.
Yeah.
He didn't focus on those things. He was only concerned with the hearts of people and how we treated each other and stuff. So I love the whole conspiracy world and because that's just how God built me, was to try to put the pieces together. But ultimately, when I look at the grand scheme of things, it's funny because when you look at media's portrayal of conspiracy theorists, you remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, if they're in a movie or TV, the conspiracy theorist was the guy that was the homeless guy standing on the side of the road that said, "Repent, the end is near." Right. And then you had 9/11 happen, and it really kind of brought the whole conspiracy aspect. It became like a household name.
Correct.
And now it's come to the point where I personally, because we're talking about how this is going to pan out, right? I personally think that it has become a household name. It has been out there, and people are so familiar with it that now they question anything. You had Epstein, and I mean there were people that used to laugh at me for being a conspiracy theorist, were coming out plastering Epstein didn't kill himself every day on their wall, and I'm going, that's a conspiracy theory, guys. What are you? Yeah. So it's so funny.
Well, there was a conspiracy to kill Jesus. I mean, conspiracies go way back. So this person is these conspiracy theorists. Hello, one of the greatest conspiracies was conspiring to actually get Jesus, crucified.
Oh, right. And Barbarous, right, who was let go in place of Jesus, killed a Roman soldier. Yeah. Right. So that you have people killing police officers, right? I mean, all of this stuff you can find in the Gospels, right? Talking about what the first century Christians were dealing with, what Jesus dealt with when he was walking the earth, and the lack of concern with all of those issues was just because Jesus wasn't worried about those things.
No.
But what I want to see people is we can see the signs and the seasons when these things are going to happen. God didn't give us revelation and Daniel and Ezekiel to see these things and not do anything about it, not say anything about it, not try to outreach people. We're supposed to know that time is drawing short, and we're supposed to be rejoicing. We're supposed to know not to be deceived. Those are the things that Jesus said, when you start seeing these things, don't be fearful, don't be deceived, and rejoice because, he's returning. So stand up, right? That was what we quoted last week. It was look up to the sky and stand up for what you believe in. So
in your opinions, and again, this is not the gospel truth, this is not prophecy, but really it'd be interesting to kind of have this documented, how you see things unfolding based on all your research, what you're seeing, and being able to kind of look, and see where things are coming together and how it works out. You can even go with two scenarios. I'm curious to know, both of you, what your view is and what happens here, let's just say leading up to the election. We can talk about after the fact, but again, it's going to escalate, but do you see any other new things coming into the picture, or do you think it's just going to be a continual, aggression when it comes to this whole Black Lives Matter? And really, they're just kind of the foot soldiers for the left or the Communist Party, in my opinion, because if you read their website, it has nothing to do with race. I mean, there's more about LGBT and destroying the family than there is about race. If you go to their main website, right? So we know that this is kind of an overarching thing, that we know that the children have been the enemy, all the abortions that are taking place. And again, their huge mission statement is based on free choice for women. So it just seems to me like it's just another garb of just all the evil that we've been seeing perpetually for many years. All of a sudden now it's come under this one banner of Black Lives Matter, and they're going to use that. I used to sit there and say to people all the time, I'm like, look, man, they're starting to attack Jesus and saying it's white supremacy and we need to start attacking, the cross and all that kind of stuff. Why haven't they gone and attacked mosques? If you look throughout history, Muhammad owned slaves. You think that they'd be attacking mosques? They're all against slavery. Well, Muhammad owned slaves. I don't know anywhere in any historian that says that Jesus owned any slaves. So it is kind of ironic, how they say it's all about slavery and about, oppression and stuff, where you kind of look at what they're doing and really has nothing to do with it. But I will say this one last thing. If you look at the only last defense that we have from tyranny are the police. Have you ever stopped and thought about that? They're the only ones that are in the way, because if the military rolls in, it's all over. So usually they're the one last one between man and tyranny. So it is interesting that they're moving towards going after the police, because I'll tell you, if they do succeed with that, they're not going to they're not going to abolish it. They're going to replace it with a whole new quote unquote woke, socialist agenda type mentality. And I think it's just going to be horrifying what they replace the police system with. What are your thoughts on that, Sampson?
Yeah, I definitely, what I foresee happening is we're going to continue through into November. We're going to see more attacks on the church. Because the people that are in power are literally coming out, like the people who have their ear in Trump, they're whispering in Trump's ear, are coming out saying that, worship services and things like that need to be shut down, because they said that the highest amount of people who are contracting coronavirus are in the faith-based community, which is a blatant lie. They're attacking the worship services. They're saying that people can't sing. This is being recommended all the way up into the highest chain. There was a conference call of the faith leaders who Trump gets support with, and they had a lady. Ian, do you remember what her name was?
I do not.
Okay, well, she's like a liaison for the infectious disease control, and she basically told them, since you guys are the leaders of the church movements across the United States, we want you guys to lead in this, and we don't want any more singing or praising in your churches, and you might as well just not even gather together. That's literally what they were telling.
No singing's allowed. No singing's allowed. You've seen those in those cities where they're like, no singing's allowed. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, where do people go and sing mainly? Churches?
Right.
Worship?
Well, yeah. But it's perfectly okay to walk down and protest and chant.
Oh, scream and yell and chant. But did you see the report? It was on the news where they showed that all large gatherings are canceled. Protests are allowed, though.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on. Don't be so blatant. It's ridiculous. I think people are getting sick and tired of seeing the hypocrisy and what they're allowing and what they're not allowing.
Are we surprised, though? Because, biblically, it even says that everything that's considered right will be considered wrong, and everything that's wrong will be considered right. So I'm not surprised by any of this. So the way that I'm looking at it now is just take what we would normally look as normal, like 6 months ago, and flip that on its head, because that's the new normal. That's what we're progressing towards. So you can spill that bucket any way you want to. But I definitely see that the progression with that. Then you're seeing the heads of BLM that are talking about destroying not only the monuments and things like that, but going into white churches and tearing down the white Jesus, which...
Well, one church was already attacked. I actually put it up on my social media and had a video of it, and they were traumatizing the kids. The kids were crying. They were coming out, and then they actually entered the church afterwards. It was a group of BLM that were around there. And again, it's just the start. But there's no doubt the minute they've attacked Jesus as a symbol of white supremacy, right? And again, we can get into the whole debate, what color skin did Jesus have, right? I personally don't believe that he was white, period, right? But the fact is that is not the point. The point is they're going to look at it as these are the symbols that need to be taken down. And of course, of all religious systems, it will be one. They won't go after Muhammad, and Muhammad owned slaves, right? But they'll go after Jesus because, again, white supremacy has to go. What do you guys think, though, about this? I wouldn't have seen this come this quick. This whole, if you're white, you're evil. And if you're born white, you basically are inherently racist. Even if you've got nothing but love in your heart, no. You've got to repent from that because, you're white, therefore you're racist.
Yeah. Well, I saw that when the initial rollout, when people were coming out and saying, especially in the faith-based communities, were saying that all lives matter to them and they were being attacked. But that's literally the stance we stand on as Christians, is that all souls matter. Maybe we just need to change it to all souls.
All souls matter. I think we should say that. Yeah, but then that's interesting. But maybe change it that way, because then people won't, no, you're discounting blacks if you say all lives, but that might be a better way to go. All souls matter.
Yeah, because that's the stance that we stand on as Christians.
You matter if you bleed red. It's so silly to me. This whole race thing is so incredibly silly. You cut any one of us, we bleed the same, right? But this whole idea that they're making, and to me, honestly, they're making racism being so big, like the KKK's around every corner, right? And these organizations, look, man, I've met a lot of people in my life. I've yet to meet someone in the KKK, right? And again, I've yet to meet people that are just inherently viciously racist. And again, where's the institutionalized racism? Name me one law in America that is institutionalizing racism. Give me the law, or give me the company that says we will not hire blacks. Name that company.
Well, I think honestly, I think people are confusing the systemic racism with actually what it is systemic classism.
Yes,
what we see
I agree with that.
Is, I mean, you can have a lower class, somebody from a trailer park in Arkansas, and you can have somebody from the inner city. They're both going to have the same, outcome because they can't afford college. They can't,
a white guy and a black guy in the ghetto, they're going to have the same kind of pass in life, right?
Right.
There's going to be no different. You're right. You nailed it on the head right there. It's class. It's a class issue, right? And also it's a family issue. Most of the ones that are having problems, I mean, the fathers are long gone, right? They got broken marriages, all sorts of stuff going on. We can get into, the prison populations, but really, statistically, if you grow up without a father, statistically, you got a greater chance of going down a crime path and also going to prison. Period. Just by not having a role model in your life.
Let me tell you something, because this is a major point. You just said it. There's no fathers in the homes, right? That's not even. I'm going to go deep on this, okay?
Yeah, do it.
I'm going to say, just like last week you had Tony and Jake on, right?
Yeah.
And they talked about covenant warfare,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that was I was part of helping make that film, and in that film, the main goal was to show that the enemy Satan has always came after the marriage covenant because it is so precious to God. It is, and destroying the home. That's the first division, right? That he's trying to divide everybody, and that's what's happening with Black Lives Matter. All these other groups. The only thing that's different is Helena Blavatsky, the theosophist and cult leader. She wrote a book called The Externalization of the Hierarchy in the early 1900s. And in this book, she said, when we do this great awakening thing where we, the hive mind, the collective, the whole thing that Q is pushing is the externalization of the hierarchy.
It's Christ consciousness. I mean, there's a lot of Christ consciousness.
Christ consciousness, yes. Yeah. It's a Gnostic awakening.
Correct.
But that's exactly what it is. And so she says, in this book, she prophesies and says in 100 years, and this is early 1900s, this is like literally 1915, 1920 time frame. She says in 100 years we're going to have another chance, and in order to be successful, we'll have to harness the power of the mystery of Golgotha, which is Christ. Okay, but what she was saying is we need the church to be on our side. So then they started this infiltration thing, right? When this is where you see the infiltration into the church, like the mystic arts, the dark arts, and all these different things being cleverly disguised and brought into the church. You got church yoga, you got all this different stuff, right? And it's just meant to divide, get in, be divisive, and separate everybody into little groups, okay? But they need Christians to be powerless so that their rituals work, right? Because they know that Christians are the only power that can stand up against them,
Correct.
Right? And if they can divide us on the small things and we can't unify, because that's exactly what God's trying to do right now. He's trying to bring unity to his body. He can't tell his body to do something unless we're all unified and start working together, right? And so he shook everything up, and it's like a smack or a slap. He threw a cup of water in our face with this whole COVID thing. Yeah. And some of us are getting it, and others are a little slower. But the point is, we have to get on the same page as him, because in order to function as one body, that's how we're going to defeat this enemy. Because we got to go in here, and I think it doesn't even matter what the label is anymore. Black Lives Matter, it doesn't matter. They're all unifying, right? You've seen the LBGTQP whatever, coming together. They're all coming together because they're unified in their hate towards us. Yeah. But we can't seem to unify against one enemy, Correct. And it's really a shame. And I think that as the believers that are true and really know what to do, and this is kind of the whole mission behind SITREP, our show, is training people to go on the offense with their faith. Because I think the church has been so beat down and really powerless because of the lack of the gospel that they preach. Because they're too afraid to offend somebody with their stuff, right? It's been seeker sensitive, and they play defense. There's attack after attack on the churches, and they just kind of fight it off, and then they're fine, right? They pacify the beast, right? But now we're to the point where It's a life or death situation. We're getting towards the end.
You can't really sit on the fence. You can't really sit on the fence anymore, right? You got to pick a side.
He doesn't have any use for you. It's like when he calls Gideon's army. Remember, he tells Gideon, "Get your men." He said, "Anybody that's afraid, go home."
Yeah.
So he sent all the people afraid. Then he tells them to drink water, and the ones that were not cupping the water and bring it to their face. In other words, they weren't alert. They put their heads into the river. He didn't want them either. He only kept a small remnant, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now. I don't want to be left out, man. You know,
Yeah.
I want to be in this battle because that's what it's about. Winning souls, this last harvest. And I'm truly passionate about getting people to realize that we have already won. I think so many Christians fight from the ground up, but they need to realize that we're seated in heavenly places and we're fighting from a place of victory. We already have our foot on the devil's neck.
Yeah.
And yet we refuse to press down, you know, and cut that air off. We're just letting them wiggle around and hit us and stab us and take out our loved ones, you know. And how long is it going to take before we snap out of it and just start going to work? Because
it's like the parable of the sower, right? I mean, a lot of the worries of life and, you know, the stress and, you know what I'm talking about, right? With the parable of the sower.
Oh yeah.
You know, and again, I think that's exactly what's happening just with a lot of the body and the church and stuff like that, because as the news starts tightening, you kind of see who the true people really are, right? The ones that kind of just jump on the bandwagon and the ones that stand up to this. And the question is, like, I remember Sampson was talking about, you know, Jesus wasn't really interested in social issues and all this. And while I agree with that, do you think Christians don't have a role to play when it comes to, you know, moral issues, social type things at all? Or do you think we should just stay out of that?
I think we should go hard at it. I think that we should not put our emotions in front of our, like what the scripture says. It doesn't matter what we feel is the right answer. It matters what it says, right? If we're a Christ follower, we believe the Bible is literal and we take it literally. And when someone asks, like whenever Jesus was asked something, he quoted scripture.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
And like I've been challenging myself, like when I get into like, you know, disagreements or maybe into a conversation that I shouldn't be involved in, but I kind of, you know, my flesh is drawing me in. If I can't return, you know, their question with my answer can't involve scripture or incorporate scripture because I don't know of any off the top of my head, then I just be silent. Because I don't want to, I think that's the only way we can win the argument, right? Is the scripture. That's the sword of the Spirit. If we don't use the weapon, like, we had J.D. Walden on and we talked about this because, you know, we talked about a lot of Christians. All they want to tell you to do is put on your armor. Yeah. So you put on your armor and they don't know the word. So they have no weapon. Correct. So who the heck goes to war wearing a bunch of armor and has no weapon? You're just running around getting beat, you know. It's like no one even thinks that through. Yeah. And so it's a really important thing to know your word and to know how to wield it because it matters, you know. Yeah. So that's the mission, man. You know, we got, you know, now is a wake-up call for the church, for the body to be able to start, you know, really getting out of the conspiracy realm because it's almost like a feudal, you know, we're never going to solve it. Even if we did solve it, the world is they've been given over.
And you almost need to do it in moderation. I don't know where you stand on that, Sampson, but I honestly believe no matter how deep or how much you do it, you've got to kind of learn that balance. You've got to learn that moderation because I think if you consume your life, really to tell you the truth, with anything, it's not good for you. I mean, if you actually think about it, anything in excess is bad for you. You can think of anything. It's not, you know, people will say, well, if you prayed all the time, that would be good. Well, no, you'd be neglecting your family and your wife. God wouldn't want you to pray all the time, right? So,
well, yeah, I agree. I agree totally. I think when I was super huge into conspiracy theories, I think it was a part of me that was trying to figure out how much time I had before I straightened up. You know, like, because I was just trying to figure out, you know, like I'm trying to line up this. I think generationally, I think every generation since the time of Christ has thought that they were in Revelations, and some rightfully so were closer than others, but. I think it's because it's our human nature to you know, because we want to live like how we want to live. And then if the signs start popping up or we get some chaos in our life or, you know, coronavirus comes through, then all of a sudden we want to be like, oh, I need to start acting like a good person because, you know, this could be the end. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think biblically what it's trying to tell us is, you know, we should be doing this from the start, not like waiting until the end.
No.
So, that's been like kind of my conviction when I changed over, and I think Ian, the same kind of thing, when we changed over from the conspiracy side to walking in a biblical, I think I was using as a substitute for relationship. I think that was my biggest thing is I was spending so much time studying and trying to figure this whole thing out, not because I was going to teach anybody at the time. I didn't have a platform. Maybe I would have a drunken conversation with somebody and, it'd be 4 hours of, me rambling on about stuff. But up until I came back to my faith, and I think I was just using it to try to say, well, I'm going to do what I want to do for as long as I can get away with it until I start seeing the signs. Cause I know they're going to be signs. But then when I started realizing, when I came back to my faith and I started walking out a Christian walk, I started realizing that those signs, the things that I'm seeing, means that time is running out. And we quote this all the time. It's from the movie Hacksaw Ridge, where the guy's up at the top and he's trying to save all these people and he's doing it all night. And now I'm realizing it's like, please God, give me the strength for one more, and that's kind of the walk that I want to walk now. Cause just like Ian quotes all the time, which was what movie was that from, Ian? Schindler's List, where they're all at the end of it and they're trying to give him a gift or whatever. And he's like, this could have been 2 more people that I could have saved. That's how I look at things. I went 30, almost 30 years. I would say like 20 some years. I went 20 years doing my own thing. How many people could I have talked to? Could I have led to Christ to go through all of that process? And I was doing my own thing, So now I look at things a lot differently, and I'm looking at the conspiracy stuff is awesome. It gives me a sign. It's like watching a clock, the 2 minutes to midnight or whatever, like I realize how close it is. Now we need to be like trying to reach out to those people that we missed, that we should have talked to about this stuff, our friends, our family members, start walking the walk and spreading the gospel the way we were supposed to years ago. So
do you think overall it's improved your life? Like before when Ian was talking about, would you say that it's improved your life? Going like so deep into the rabbit holes and learning all the, truths that you have been, like, again, when it comes down to what we were even talking about this evening, a lot of the stuff is like, we still don't fully know, but like, would you say it's improved your life?
I don't know. I don't know that it has improved my walk. I do know, objectively speaking, now that I see the indoctrination, right? If I watch TV and media, I'm so blown away now by the things that I see because of all the stuff that I've studied that's in the media.
Correct.
I'm like, how I know everything that I know. How is this affecting the kids, the teenagers, the young adults, even all the way up to, the elderly who are watching this stuff and have no idea of the esoteric meaning behind it, that they're like trying to indoctrinate you into witchcraft and all this stuff. I'm going, how is nobody seeing this?
I could make an argument though and say that if you, before a movie, and I've said this to a lot of people, I do this myself, because yes, we watch movies sometimes to learn stuff, but we also do for entertainment, because let's be honest, no matter what it is, we like a little entertainment in our life. But so if you're going to do that anyways, why not pray before the movie and say, hey, God, show me something that I normally would not see. Right? Or let me hear something I normally would not hear. I want to hear, your ears. I want your eyes on this. So let's just say that someone's not a conspiracy theorist and they actually pray that and say, God, show me something I normally would not see while I'm watching this movie. He's going to reveal to them, and maybe it's not the same thing, that esoteric thing, but it might be something else that they can apply in their life to talk to people. Because the ultimate goal, as we've all agreed, is giving the gospel to people, right? The Great Commission, right? And I think that's what we need to look at is how do we apply this to have a proper, effective witness? And again, we're wired different, and maybe we're called to those type of people more so than just the average person, because there's truth in the fact that, if you're gonna witness and give the gospel in the hood or in a ghetto, you don't want to come in with a Ralph Lauren, shirt on and be all preppy. You're not going to really make any headway at all. Like Paul said this, he said, be all things to all men, right? And it's almost so there is truth to that really, if you're going to talk to someone that's conspiratorial minded, you got to kind of know that world yourself. So I think God does that to an extent, but he says, okay, guy, you got enough that you can have that conversation, but the conversation is not that. It's all about the kingdom. It has nothing to do with earth. It has to do with kingdom. And I think that's how we can look at it. But, I just wanted to throw that out and see where you guys were at with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that my own personal opinion of this is I believe that God allowed me to get as far and as deep as I did because there's a purpose behind it. I snapped out of it. I'm still a conspiracy guy, right?
Sure.
I still believe all this stuff.
Yep.
I have not changed this in any way. I have priority. My priorities have shifted. And so I don't spend as much time doing that. Now, I do believe that God has specifically gifted me with certain knowledge and ability to do a specific thing for him. And he won't tell me what it is. And I don't need him to, right? But I do think that all the information that I have in my brain will come in handy in some situation at some point. You know, even just initial conversations with people. When people say, hey, you know anything about this? I'm like, yeah, probably. You know what I mean? Like, I probably do know enough to get the conversation going. Whereas, you know, there's a lot of people out there that have no idea about any of this, right? So there's specific people, and not everybody, like, just because you're going to go share the gospel on the street, like a street preacher, you don't just go to the hood. No. You know what I mean? You can go to the suburbs. You go to your circles, man.
Sure.
You know, and that's kind of what led us to this new mission that we're starting here, Mission 242. And the whole idea behind it was Acts 2:42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. So this just means, hey, have some people over to your house, right? There's a lot of people out there that criticize the church. They're, you know, and rightfully so on some occasions. Like I myself have been hurt by the church many times, but no one's perfect, right? And a lot of these people, they'll separate, they'll do online church, and it's even easier now to disconnect. But you know, ultimately, you need to reconnect because people are important to God.
What does Jesus think of the church? That's the biggest question. You got to look at, like, all these people that are bashing on the bride. You got to be like, whoa. You got to be careful what you're bashing. In the same way I always talk to people when you start bashing the Jews and stuff. I'm like, whoa. You know, yeah, there's some bad actors out there, but it's the same thing of like all cops are evil or all the Jews are bad. I mean, whoa. Settle down here, right? Start reading the Bible and be careful with what you're saying. And I'd say the church is no different. Yeah, of course there's no imperfect church. There's imperfect churches. They've got issues. But the question is, what was Jesus willing to do for that church that was blemished? And that was, you know what I mean? So we have to look at it. We always have to look at it at that point. So I think that's really important, you know, what you're bringing up, especially when it comes to church. Because I agree. I mean, especially in truther circles, heck, try to find anyone that's pro-church anymore. It's really rare. Yeah.
And then, well, I mean, you know, it's hard too because, you know, sometimes they make decisions that you don't agree with. And then they just want to disconnect, right? I don't agree with that. I'm out of here, right? Yeah. And that's not biblical. It's not loving. It's not anything, right? Yeah. And so, you know, we've been given this ability to really see through the darkness and pick out what's a lie and what's not. And so these people need to know that too, right? So even though they hurt your feelings, you need to go to them. But this is a side note because this is Mission 242. So this is something a little different. And this is because I came up with this, and it was the Holy Spirit all the way. But it has to do with people that they say, I can't find a good church to go to, or there's no believers by me. Right. There's always an excuse for why they're in the situation they're in. Right. Yeah. But every single person that listens to this, that's hearing me talk right now, has a house where they live. Yep. And they can open that house up for fellowship with other people that don't have to be believers. Open it up in your own community. Right. Just put out a note and say, hey, a block party at my house or whatever. Right. Anybody come over. Let's have a cookout. Let's get to know each other. And then when you get into the process of making, you know, friendships, you cultivate these relationships, that's how you begin to break into the discipleship making strategy that God had planned in the first place, right? Yep. Doing fellowship and doing life with each other. And so this is like Mission 242, how it works is we're called to be a movement of home-based communities or house churches, right? Yep. So, you know, small home-based communities are the most powerful way of being the church together because life is done better in circles than it is in rows. Yep. And I think that's like the most awesome way I've ever heard it. I would totally 100% agree with this house church movement because you know, when you go to a church, you can make friends and you can get fed the gospel and stuff. But when you get into house church, you make brothers and sisters and you have family and you share each other's burdens and you pray with each other. And
you can get conspiracy. You can get conspiracy stuff online. Like if you need some outlets, like, oh, I can't find a church that teaches flat earth. So what? If your church doesn't believe in flat Earth, that's not a reason to stop going to that church. Get your flat Earth outlet online. But the fact of the matter is, especially if you're a new believer, I would say that honestly, if you're in the first 5 to 10 years of being a Christian, if you're not going to church, man, you're missing out. You're not just missing out; you're completely missing the whole thing. Church is very important, right? And I would say you'll get more from that, huh?
The scripture says, forsake not the assembling together, right?
100%.
The assembling of yourselves. So,
but who's dedicated enough to do that? Like in a church setting, like when they're saying that, like some will say, well, just create your own church. But most of them fizzle out. Most of them never really, we're not talking about just having a hangout and a barbecue, right? I agree with what you're saying, but I'm saying the whole essence of church, without getting into a big debate, is important, right? Period. You know what I mean? Especially if you're a new Christian. Now, if you've been walking for a while and you're kind of picky, God's calling you, for a time and a season to find the perfect church, whatever. But especially if you have a family and you're not bringing your family to like an environment like that, I think it's something that's not good at all. I've always talked to people and I've told them, look, man, it's important. You need to find a church. Like, I just can't find the right church. I'm like, go church hopping if you need to, but pray, because he might lead you to a place that you're only going to be there for 5 years and then he'll move you on. But you're supposed to be there for 5 years. Not forever, right? Go there until he calls you to leave, but don't be like, well, I went there, for a year and all of a sudden I didn't like this one decision, or, I didn't like the way the worship was, or something. Like, sometimes we got to look at it like, are we going to church for us or do we go to church for him?
Do you go to church to serve others? Or are you trying to get served? That's what
I'm just saying, ultimately,
are
you going there for God, or are you going there for yourself? Like, are you sitting there with your arms folded and you're like, well, I don't like the guitar player, oh, I don't like the way they sing. And like, all I'm saying is your heart has to be in the right place. And honestly, let God, give you that time and see what happens when you say, look, man, I'm not happy. I don't think this is right. But, if this is something you want me to do, then change my heart, God. Have God put him in control. But I'll tell you one thing, he would much rather you be in a good church environment, a Bible-believing church, even if there's some problems, than you basically being Mr. Solo, Mr. Zorro online, right? Tossing in the wind, and not having any accountability and some good discipleship. And that is just a danger, especially if you're a new believer or you're a babe in Christ. My goodness, so much is happening right now online where people are getting saved. There's zero discipleship, zero.
Yeah. And we see a lot of people, and we've seen this time and time again, as people, they don't have anyone to go to, or a group of people, or a community, or an ecclesia, and so then they're out there by themselves, and they're thirsty. They're like so hungry for information, and the only option that they have is, say, YouTube. Yeah. Well, you can fall down some rabbit holes, with certain teachers and stuff that take you what look Christian on the surface, then end up taking you into gnosis. Yeah. And then you're following down a rabbit hole where you ended up denying the Messiah. And I mean, there's so many different ways.
There's three things the devil will attack you with, and every which one, if he gets you on one of these things, is going to be a progression of downhill motion. It's going to be prayer, Bible reading, and church, right? But the first thing he'll knock out is consistent prayer, right? The minute you start talking, you stop talking to God, you're not really going to be opening that Bible as much, right? They all kind of work together, but all those three are really important. But notice, wherever you are in your life, notice those three. And again, if one of those things are lacking, you're going to see how everything's connected. I will guarantee you that most things are going to be falling apart if one of those things is not consistent in your life, right? You could say, well, you ask someone, when's the last time you read the Bible? Oh, it's been, if you're saying it between you and God and examining yourself, a lot of times Satan knows how it works. And if he can just stop one thing, like, I'll just go to him to stop reading that Bible. Pretty soon you're just going to be like, I don't really need to go to church, right? So he just knows all he has to do is attack one of those factors. Like, for example, a husband and wife, say they're praying a lot. I'll tell you one thing, you want to talk about an attack, start praying with your wife consistently every day and watch how long that lasts, or how much you get attacked, because I've seen it time and time again where all of a sudden, if you don't keep that in check, you pretty much will stop after maybe the first couple of weeks, maybe a month. But I guarantee it's hard to be consistent over a year every single day. But I'll tell you one thing, we talked about this before, the family, and especially marriage, the covenant warfare within the marriage. The minute he severs that, especially two coming together with one accord with him at the center, that's powerful. I don't care what you say, right? So a husband and wife coming together in prayer is super important. All you got to do is examine your life, and if all of a sudden, if you're not doing it, whoever's listening in, just know that if you can get that together, and just that one thing, you can stay consistent and say, look, man, I don't care what goes on, we're going to do this every single day. I'm telling you right now, everything will start falling into place. But the minute that severs, something else will get procrastinated on. Maybe we don't need to do this. Let's wait for another 6 months. We can't really find a church anyways. And meanwhile, your kids, your family, and as the spiritual leader, you're kind of making excuses, and you're saying, well, you're being picky. I'm saying, look, man, going to some church that's not perfect is better than basically not going to church at all.
Right. Right.
So anyways, that's kind of one of those things, but I know like we're wrapping up here on Revolution Radio. If you want to join us for the after show on YouTube, check us out on YouTube. We're going to be doing a little bit more here with Ian and Sampson on Celebrate Truth Radio, but the conversation's going awesome, and I know that we started late on YouTube. We had technical issues, so we're going to go over there, so stay tuned and join us on YouTube. Blessings all. But anyways, I just get on a big rant with that because I just know for a fact that the vectors that he will attack, especially when it comes to the family, when it comes to especially the spiritual head, us as husbands and fathers, I'll tell you one thing, that's where he's going to get you, is prayer first. He's going to knock that out, right? And he'll knock that out with your wife first. These things are really important, especially when it comes to the marriages being under attack. And again, even the divorce rate, do a statistic and find out how many people that are going through divorce that prayed every day together. Good luck. Have fun finding out, because even if you're fighting and you come together in prayer, you can be honest in that, and someone can see genuine that you're truly deep down inside, you're sorry, right? For that argument or whatever. But again, when you're coming to God, your wife, is hearing this, or vice versa. To me, it's just like he said, in the Bible, don't go to bed don't go to bed angry, right? While the sun's up or whatever. What's the verse? Sorry. I'm like totally, don't go to bed while you're still angry, right?
Yeah, don't let the sun fall on your anger.
Yeah, exactly. And he says, what's the next part of that verse? Lest the devil get a foothold in your relationship or in your life, or you know what I mean? But there's that clause there. It says, look, if you do this, you're going to give him a foothold, right? You're going to give him an extra inch there that you're not going to be aware of. Now two times angry, right? 3 times angry, right? And all of a sudden now it starts creeping in. But, we're talking about church, we're talking about prayer and Bible reading, but all these things are important. I guess what we're trying to say, and I think we're all in agreement, is ecclesia, fellowship, church, it is very important. If you're just on YouTube, that's no problem. But don't ever think that listening to Ian and Sampson, that's your church. I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same way, that you'd be like, hey, that's great, listen to us, but don't be we can't be just your church. You know what I mean? Find a church, but also listen to us. Is that the way you guys feel, or how do you feel when it comes to people coming to you and saying, no, you're like my pastor. I come to you, you're my church. What do you say when you hear that?
I've said many a times, I'm not a teacher. I'm just here to remind you of stuff. But no, I don't feel like.
Well, you have a gift. I mean, what would you say your gift is, though? I mean, you can't just brush that off and say, well, I'm not a teacher. I would beg to differ when it comes to you not being classified as a teacher. I mean, what would you think, Ian? Do you think Aaron or Samson's a teacher?
Yeah, I think he's got.
So there you go.
Samson, don't put that on me.
You're busted. So there you go. You just found out on Celebrate Truth Radio, you are a teacher. But no, there's nothing. I mean, the only scary thing about that is there's going to be more on you because you are a teacher, right? You've been called to teach, so you've got a lot more. It has nothing to do with authority. It has to do with accountability. You're going to be judged even more so because you are a teacher, right? We all are. If we're on here and we're talking to people, we are. As long as you're a humble teacher, as long as you're a teacher that teaches people to actually look here rather than there, right? And I think that's important as being, Christians, believers. We need to say, look, you need to find this. This is the most important. This is great. Listen to us. But this is where you need to go. You need to be in a fellowship. You need to find a good church, especially if they're brand new believers. If they're brand new believers and they're just listening to us all every week or every day or whatever, man, we're doing them a disservice. We're doing them a massive disservice by them just kind of floating around on YouTube listening to us. I mean, the devil is just going to have a heyday with them. Would you not agree?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think that we are stronger in numbers. I mean, in all honesty, if you're out there by yourself, the enemy is going to have all the resources to attack you and take advantage of the situation. I mean, ecclesia is so important amongst the body because not only is it to keep you in check, but you're supposed to have this brother and sister kind of relationship with your friends, family members, your wife, where you do something wrong, they're keeping you in check. And I'm seeing a lot of people that fall away into this, they don't have a circle of friends or believers around them, and they get pulled away, and then they just start cutting off all their relationships with friends and family members.
There's no accountability.
Right. Because no one is there to tell them to decipher for them, right or wrong or whatever. So they just kind of look at everything like, well, I have to cut everything out of my life and I got to go hide in my closet, and really the whole, you never see that in the New Testament church, right? They were going out and teaching and going out and discipling and going out and spreading the gospel. You can't do that when you've cut yourself off from everyone, and yeah, I think pride plays a big part in this. Because if you think that you're better than, a church that you may be called to, how much are you missing from like, I don't know, because we've seen this in our walks, is where we've seen that God teaches us up, say, one column, right? Like I came up in a Christian church, but when we were about 10, 11, 12 years old, my parents started taking us out of like going to Christmas and Easter and stuff like that, because they started studying, I'm talking mid 90s, started studying about how they were pagan holidays and stuff like that. So we got kind of went away from that and went more messianic for a long time. And then of course, when I turned 16, I was out, did my own thing, went into the world. And then God kind of brought me up on this one column and then took me back over to the other. And I think you see this in Revelation with the Church of Ephesus, where it's like they built these kind of this truther group up where they were able to weed out the good from the bad and the liars and this and that. But then he chastises them and says, look, you guys are doing great here. This is awesome. But now I need you to go back to the first love that you had. Yeah. And you need to go back to that, and repent for the kind of like divisiveness and stuff that you've been towards people. Because if anybody doesn't know about the Church of Ephesus, is they were like the gateway to the rest of the Eastern churches. And anybody who had any kind of new Christian idea, like if they were trying to push a new religion through to the churches, of the Eastern churches, they had to go through Ephesus first. So the Ephesians got really, really, really good at picking through and noticing when somebody was coming through with some new, Gnostic text or whatever. And the problem is they started turning on each other, so, and we see that now in even our truther groups and Torah groups, and, even in evangelical movements, you start seeing that, Christians attacking each other and stuff like that. And it's so destructive to the body. And that's what God is trying to call us, to set us those things away, apart. And when we need to come together and function. The right hand doesn't always need to know what the left hand's doing, and the right hand doesn't need to know how to be an eye or a foot be a nose. So sometimes we kind of just have to. There was a story, I think it was in Matthew. I'd have to look it up, but the disciples run up to Jesus and they're like, Jesus, we just ran across a group of people that were like casting out and healing people in your name. Should we go tell them to stop? And he's like, no, why would you go tell them to stop? He's like, let them do their thing. He said, is basically saying if they're using my name, then they're not our enemies. They're with us.
Correct.
So we can't look at our brothers and sisters who are out there doing the works of God and chastise them because they don't feel or know or have come to the understandings that we have, because maybe they're not there yet. Maybe God doesn't need them to know the true name of Jesus. Yeah. I mean, we can go through all of these different things, but he
might not ever need for them to know ever too. I mean, we might be like, oh, what? You mean that he might not actually reveal to someone that the earth is flat? They actually live their whole life and do service for him and actually do incredible, ministry and, preach the gospel. But that all is discounted because obviously they still believe in that globe. Right? To me, it's so foolish. It's so foolish to start taking a certain doctrine that has nothing to do with salvation and start putting it up on a pedestal where you start looking down on everyone and say, well, I mean, I'm the most enlightened of you all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
I'll
pray for you. Obviously you can't see and I have the gift, right? So, to me, gifts in a way are very, very dangerous. I mean, if you don't have them in check, pride does set in. Because you start lording these gifts, I can use a lot of examples, but gifts to me are, very scary. I think that's why he said of all things, if you don't have love, you have nothing. I don't care what you claim to be, a teacher, you have the gift of prophecy, you have the gift of any of these gifts, but you have not love. He's basically saying it's all completely bunk. It's useless.
Well, I think that's how God weighs us in the balance. Is the gifts that He's given us, do we use them for our benefit or for the benefit of the kingdom?
Yeah.
And I think that's how it really looks, and pride plays a big part in that, because are we doing these things? Are we even in the churches and people who are out there? I see a lot of people who are doing things for their own reasons, or they get into callings and stuff because they wanted to, not because the Holy Spirit asked them. So, we really have to be aligned with the will of the Father, and not be walking. We're getting into dangerous times that if you're walking out there without any protection under the wing of the Father, then you're walking in some dangerous ground, So that's been our biggest warning to everybody, is get right with God now. Repent.
So over to Ian. Ian, I know that we started with, Sampson talking a little bit about what he sees kind of coming down the road. What about you? I mean, and again, like I said, nothing's going to be held against you as far as calling you out or anything. But really, what do you see is going to happen here in the next few months? Because what we're talking about, obviously is having people not fear, they should pray. But really, I mean, how do people get prepared? I mean, for things that are going to take place over the next few months to a year or two?
Well, I would say the most important thing to do is to work on your relationships in your home. If you're married and you have kids and a wife, and take really good care of them. That's your first priority, is to make sure that they're safe and they're protected, and that you're doing everything you can to cultivate those relationships. I would say, the Father being in there as well. You're
Sure.
building on this. You have to build a foundation, man, because especially right now, everything got shaken, and you realize, hey, a lot of these people that claim to be Christians, and this is straight up the craziest thing. I belong to a church. I'm in a house church. I'm in a other church, and I love these people. And in my own circles, I was shocked at how many people didn't do any church at all in the first 5 weeks of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And these are people that are involved, that teach Sunday school, that do something, their leadership type, status at churches. Sure. Mm-hmm. And when everything shut down, their life got chaotic, and they didn't end up doing online church. They did nothing for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's that's shocking to me.
Yeah.
My mind ramped up. But I just couldn't believe that. I'm like, man, of all times, dude, this is the biggest time to make sure, because, just like battle, real life battle, man, when the bullets start flying, your muscle memory kicks in. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have any, that's a bad thing, because your mind, you go through this shell shock stage where you can't put anything together for 5 minutes. You're useless. Right? Well, that's plenty of time for the devil to kill you. Mm-hmm. So you got to make sure that some type of defensive mechanisms are kicking in, or offensive. That's what we're trying to say. But as far as what's happening in the world, I would say that they're obviously right now, they're going to be pulling out all the stops trying to disrupt this election. Whether that looks like another round of virus, or another round of BLM, or a new group of people, or maybe another terror attack, or I don't know, man. Pretty much they can do whatever they want. They're going to try to do a lot, I would imagine. I would imagine they're going to try to take out Trump, physically take him out and remove him.
Do you think before, or do you think after, if he wins? Do you think it's more likely that they would try to be more aggressive?
I don't see this ever getting calm. If Trump wins, he's going to really have. You mean after he wins, will it calm down?
No, good point. No, I just meant if there was an assassination attempt, to me it would make more sense that if he actually won, they'd be oh, really bad, because I still think they're going to go ballistic. I mean, they are going to go ballistic, literally try to force him out of the White House, because everything's gone wrong in the world. How could this happen? I mean, they were kind of sidelined the first time, they were kind of caught off guard. I mean, no one saw it coming. This time, I believe they're all going to be prepared. They're all going to be voting. All the stars are going to be saying, go out and vote like crazy. So when they do that and they still lose, I think they're going to think it was corrupt. The voting was rigged, and therefore we need to actually by force take it out. That's personally what I think is going to happen, because they just will not believe that he legitimately got in. I mean, we could go the other direction, that if he loses, we'll probably say, oh, it's corrupt, right? He lost because they so either way, it's going to be staged in that sense. But I just say, look, man, it's going to be bad even if he wins. Even though I want Trump to win, I'm saying, and I believe that he will, I still am looking at the other scenario and I'm saying, guys, look, man, if he wins, it's still going to be bad, man. Not because it's Trump, because they are going to lose their mind. Like I'm talking the left here now. They're going to lose their mind.
So this might be a little different than anybody's ever said, but I mean, I know Aaron and I have talked about this, but
sure.
So I think, so we talked about NESARA and JSARA, these the economic plans that are going to come into effect. So what people are not talking about, and even Q talks about NESARA and JSARA, but they're not talking about aspects of it that are kind of important, I think. Like everybody wants this jubilee, right? They want the money, right? In like they want the debt forgiveness and all that stuff. And that sounds really good. Yeah. And we already know the system sucks, so we're at this point we're kind of all like, well, this next one can't possibly suck as bad as this, right?
It's true.
But part of the NESARA thing was once it's instituted, it says that the president will step down, and everyone that's elected official in our country will step down, and they will hold free elections. Because what they said also, one of the things is they're going to re-educate the lawyers on constitutional law.
Interesting.
Well, what are we seeing happen right now? They're pretty much championing these people for not using constitutional law.
Correct.
Yet all of them are constitutional lawyers.
Correct.
And so they have to make this look so bad. Like it's, that's why when QAnon is saying that justice is about to happen, it's not about to happen, because they can't let it happen yet, because their plan will institute justice, right? It will because the plan will come in because there is no justice. We have to destroy this system.
Correct.
And bring in this new system, right? We're watching it happen. And everyone's like, if Trump wins, we'll be fine. What if Trump wins and in 3 months the economy tanks?
Correct.
And goes completely under.
Yeah.
NESARA comes up, and then Trump steps down. And guess what? No one reelects him. Or he says, I am not.
Why like even because I mean, there's presidents have gone through like the Depression and some horrific, financial systems. Why would he step down just because the economy crashes and we go into a depression? Wouldn't he be working hard to try to get us out of the depression?
NESARA states that once it's instituted, the leadership, the elected officials, have to step down and then be voted in and pledged under this new system. But what if so everyone, the Q people and all these people, they're saying that Trump will do this, and then he will step down, and then we will then reelect him right then into this new position.
Yeah.
But what if he doesn't want to go?
Correct.
What if he says, I'm not doing it?
Yeah.
Like, I've done my job. Remember, like a couple months ago when the seal was gone, he said something super suspicious. He said, "It has been a pleasure to have been your president."
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, "What? What does that mean?"
I never saw that clip. He actually says that on record.
Yeah. Well, there's no seal. There's no presidential seal on the thing. And this was when they were like, "Pay attention to details. Details matter." There's no seal on the White House podium and all that stuff. And everybody was saying like the emergency thing had kicked in, and there is martial law is kicking in and all that. And Trump said, "It's been a pleasure to have been your president." He did say that, and everyone's like, "What the heck is he talking about?" Like maybe there's something behind the scenes, Maybe what I heard a long time ago with when 9/11 happened, they put us in a state of emergency. And
I hear what you're saying, but I mean, you could actually say it in that term as well. Like, it's been a pleasure being your president, or it's been a pleasure being your boss for 4 years. Like, all I'm saying is that still doesn't say that he's stepping down. I know it's kind of a weird language, but you still, in English, you still speak like that. You don't necessarily have to say it's a pleasure being your president. You could actually still say it that way. I know what you're going, but again, I wouldn't jump on that one too far.
No, dude. I'm telling you. I'm not saying he did. I'm saying that part of, if NESARA comes in, he will have to step down.
Yeah. I agree with that. I'm talking about the quote itself. I'm saying when Trump said it, everyone said, I remember the seal was removed, then all of a sudden it came back on.
Yeah,
and stuff.
No, that wasn't nothing. I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff that goes on that we don't know what they're talking about, and there's conspiracies going on. But if NESARA comes in, then he will have to step down.
Okay. And that would be
everyone assumes he would be reelected, but what if he doesn't?
Correct. I agree with that. No, I agree with that. If there's all of a sudden like a complete reboot, like where they're like Jubilee and everything just starts from scratch, and it's just like it just starts from scratch, I agree. It's all up in the air at that point. Nobody can go with just what normalcy looks like anymore. I mean, that's literally a world, and again, that's a worldwide thing as well too. That's not just America. That's every country forgiving all debts of every country. You know, and again, interesting enough, the Jubilee though is a very biblical thing, right? I mean, they did that.
Well, that's what I believe they'll use the term Jubilee.
Yeah.
Try to harness the Christians,
Probably.
And keep us in, because it's not necessarily a Jubilee.
No.
It's like almost a flip of currency. So they're going to do a 1-for-1 exchange.
Correct.
So it'll put third world countries at the same level as everyone else.
Keep in mind, though, they have done this. They have done this a few times over, even in the last 100 years. There's been multiple resets of currencies when they went off the gold standard, right, with the Bretton Woods, right? I mean, people freak out and say, "Oh my goodness, they're going to a reset," even though, there could be some bad things coming. Throughout history, though, these things do happen. I'm surprised that we've got this far without a reset, to tell you the truth, just how bad the system is. So there definitely needs to be a reset. And I'm not talking about a New World Order reset. I'm just saying when it comes to a default, that's a better word, because there's two ways that America can get out of the situation they're in. Is literally raise interest rates, which will completely destroy the economy, which they can't do, or they print money continually. But as they print money, they're going to cause inflation, right? Because everyone's dollar is going to be worth nothing. It's going to take you like $1,000 to buy eggs, at some point. And people laugh at that, but that's what's happened in Zimbabwe. It's happened in Germany. It's happened in many countries when they start printing like crazy. And America, and not just America, every country's doing this. So you're right. We are moving towards a reset. And I would agree with you if there is a complete Jubilee reset, one of those things, and they say that everyone's stepping down and we're just starting from scratch, then who knows at that point? All bets are off. There is no guaranteed Trump or anything. Trump could just say, I'm done. You know what I mean? I've had my term. Good. You guys have your whole new world. I was trying to, run it this way, and you guys have at her, So you're right. I totally agree with that 100%. What do you think when it comes to what we're discussing, Sampson?
Oh, I was just thinking, because this reminds me a lot of because you're talking about the election cycle and everything. If you guys remember, I used to read a lot of graphic novels, like comic books and stuff, and V for Vendetta was like a really popular one. And there was a lot of stuff that was changed when they made it into the movie. And it's funny the way that they did it, because instead of, there was like a Great World War that caused the events of the graphic novel, but in the show, or in the movie that they made, it was actually a virus called the St. Mary's virus. And what's funny is that event timeline happens in 2020. I don't know if most people know that or not, but so V for Vendetta happens because of a virus, a very religious, conservative power steps up and takes over, and then you have V, who is like the anti-hero of the show that's fighting the system. It's actually the playbook for the Anons. That's why V is actually kind of like an Antichrist figure. I mean, you're rooting for V, but V really is not the good guy at all in that whole movie. Right. Yeah, he even uses MK Ultra on the secondary character on it to get hurt. But yeah, so, and then you have the tagline for it is remember the 5th of November. And so I find it funny that we do our elections on November 3rd, and by the 5th of November this year, we will know who the president will be.
That's right.
And so I really, because I've been looking at V for Vendetta, because Anons, when I was a part of the Anon group, like back when it first started, they took up the Guy Fawkes mask. And then you also see the whole mask thing that's happening.
So what was it for you? Sorry to interject. Well, what was it for you that was the final straw? Because you obviously started, you were aligned with Q, and then something happened and you're like, I'm not buying anymore. Because obviously at the beginning you were like lock, stock, and barrel. You were 100% on board.
Well, so the Q stuff, I'm talking Anonymous, that was back fighting Scientology.
Sorry.
So I mean, I think a lot of people transferred from the Anon movement to the QAnon movement. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. So I know a lot of people get confused by that because they hijacked their.
I just did. Yeah.
But yeah, so the Anonymous, the pre QAnon thing, the Anonymous movement they hijacked the Guy Fawkes mask, and they were using that symbology to reach out. And this was like a very inside of the Anonymous group, there were lots of subsects because there was no leadership really. I mean, it was kind of controlled, but there was a change that happened with the original Anon group. Was like anti-system, anti-like Scientology, all of that kind of stuff, where they tried to attack Scientology and stuff. And there was a change in it, and it switched to more Marxist stuff, like the things that we're seeing with Antifa. It started moving towards that. Yeah. So, but it's like a playbook for Antifa. If you watch that movie, I highly recommend it. What's funny is when all this started kicking off, they put it back on Netflix. So like you can go watch it on Netflix right now, along with the Contagion movie and all this other stuff. It's funny when you see these things socially happen that Netflix is like, hey, we have a movie for that. Yeah. But so it happens in 2020. And then the whole tagline is that the riots happen because a girl's wearing a mask and a police officer shoots a little girl. So V's already dead by this point. And at the very end of it, he just set it up so that the chaos was brewing underneath the surface. And people are so scared because of the Guy Fawkes masks that there's a little girl that's playing and a guy gets, antsy about it and shoots her in the back. And then all, hell, pardon the pun, but all hell breaks loose. Yeah. And so that is like, so I'm just looking at that. I'm like, is this a playbook for what we're going to see like this November 5th? Because it's 2020. We had a virus. It's literally a layout of what we're seeing today. So yeah, I'm this November is really gonna.
So what do you guys? Because you both believe then that there's going to be like a financial collapse of some sort in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4, like in the next 5 years, there's something coming, right? Probably a lot sooner, but let's just be gracious there. So the question for you guys is, what are you recommending, or what are you doing personally to kind of prepare for that to happen? Because quite honestly, a lot of people are going to be hurt severely. And if you know that it's coming, how can you prepare yourself and kind of be in a position to kind of weather that storm? Because I would imagine if you go through an event like that, it's going to take some time to chug back up to normal. Usually these events like a depression or something like that, which I believe that we are headed towards, and I'm not talking just America, I'm talking the whole world. We're moving towards a global, complete depression. The question is that, will it be 5, 7, 10 years? I think it's going to be more of the latter. But what about you guys? Like, what are you thinking when it comes to the financial collapse? Because even if they go with a new system, it doesn't just, instantly come back. Everyone's, happy again. It chugs up. But also, what are you going to do to prepare before that happens? Because, not getting wiped out or just having stuff to, weather that storm.
So,
you want to go ahead?
I was saying,
Sorry, I'll go again.
Have started this, but we like my household here, we got chickens, and we started raising chickens. We also started doing some agricultural stuff, like growing. Like my wife is learning how to take care of a garden, how to raise certain plants, things like that. In the space that we have, that's only going to be sustainable for a certain portion of the year, sure, and for only a small amount. So I'm not super preppy. My mom has been more of the person that is, she lives with us after my dad passed away, but she's accumulated like things of food and stuff. But then again, you're still only talking about a minimal amount of food, and that may last us in an emergency. But
sure, but food and water and guns and ammo, and everyone talks about these. But other than that, as far as financially, are you guys do you guys look at all into like precious metals, gold, silver? Do you look into any cryptocurrencies? I mean, do you look at anything outside of that system that, is like a diversification that's not part of that system? Like, to me, what I'm saying is like being in the stock market or 401ks or all this stuff in the bank, to me is all the same system. Like when Ian's talking about a complete jubilee or a complete reset, all that stuff goes away. It just evaporates, right? The question is, what are some things that can kind of maintain that purchasing power? Myself personally, I've been a strong believer in gold, silver, also cryptocurrency for me. But I just thought, I like to ask this on the show because a lot of people listen in and they're like, well, what do I do? Yeah, okay, I got some food, I water. But I really think it's smart for people to understand the difference between currency and money. The stuff that's in your wallet or the stuff that's trading around there digitally is not money. That's currency. Right? And currency is a big illusion, right? People think it's real. It's not money. And the question is, what is money? Would it make more sense for you guys to save a bunch of money before this happens, or to save a bunch of currency?
Yeah, I've tried to look into Yeah, I mean, I would love to have the available funds to to be able to
silver is like $18, and I tell people I don't care what situation you are, get 1 ounce a month if you need to, but start getting 1 ounce at a time and make a goal. In a year you want to be at so many, but I tell people all the time, dude, you can afford 1 ounce of silver, and quite honestly, if you do that over a year and you got 12 ounces of silver, you're going to have a lot more than 99% of the entire world population. A very small, a handful of people own precious metals that they can hold in their hands. Literally, I think it's less than like 1% as far as physical silver, you know? So again, there's no excuses for silver. $18, buy an ounce every month for a year. You're going to be happy. You'll have 18 ounces sitting there, but you'd be surprised what that 18 ounces. To give you an example, when I was born, 1972, an ounce of gold was $35, right? So think of this, right? $35. So if my parents basically gave me an ounce of gold then, or they gave me $35 to put it in a box. Now, forward to 2020. If I basically grab and I open up that box, I got two scenarios there. I've got that ounce of gold that was $35, or I got $35 in cash. So now let's go back to 1972. 1 ounce of gold, $35 would buy you an Armani suit and 2 pairs of shoes, right? So now let's go back to 2020. The same ounce of gold, if you cash it out right now, you can get an Armani suit and 2 pairs of shoes. If you grab that $35 out of that box, you can hardly buy a nice t-shirt. What's happened over that time? What's happened since 1972 to 2020? People will say, well, it went up. No. The dollar's gone down. What's happening is a lot of people don't understand in this whole system that's about to collapse, which I agree with you, is it's losing its purchasing power. That's why it's taking more dollars to pay for the same things. Things like precious metals, gold, silver, these type of things, they preserve your purchasing power over long periods of time. That is what classifies money. Money needed to be a store of value over a long period of time. That's why currency is not. You basically put, $20 in a box and you basically give it to your grandchildren, either buy a bag of chips with that $20, right? Like they can buy, hardly anything at all. So it is important. And I bring this up because a lot of people will be prepping and they'll get all these stuff together. But I'm like, it's really smart to be like, look, God calls us to be good stewards, especially with our money. So if you have an opportunity to be like, I want to save money, I want to save, what God made, not what man made. Man made currency, God made precious metals. You can say whatever you want, but the fact is gold and silver is God made, where currencies are man made, and they're all corrupt. Gold and silver have never been corrupt. If anything, they've been kind of an accounting system all throughout history where when things get out of whack, they kind of come along and they do this accounting and everything resets again and it chugs along, then it starts getting out of order again. But gold and silver throughout history have always equalized the system. I honestly believe that it's God's accounting in the world to keep things right, because all throughout history we see this time and time again. So I urge you guys to look into it a bit more, and also the listeners to really look into it. And it's not about, I got to buy thousands of dollars of it. Buy 1 ounce. I don't know what, position that you're in that you're listening, but if you can afford one a week, do 1 a week. But silver is a smarter play right now than gold. And anybody, I don't care who you are, $18 for an ounce of silver, I don't care where you're at, you can basically afford it. So I wanted to throw that in there, bit of a rant, but again, it's important because, this will help you. All throughout history, it always has. Like right now, people are saying no cash. Have you noticed the big escalation on no cash? Isn't that concerning? How many people are going to no cash now?
Oh yeah. It's the only thing that concerns me. I mean, even if I think it is good to have some of that, and that's something that I've been interested in looking into. The only thing that concerns me, though, you can, like you said, throughout history they've always come back to the standard, but throughout history you've always been able to buy, sell, and trade. Though, if you look into Revelation, if you've got gold and silver, though, and the markets aren't going to sell to you because you can't just bring in a block of gold and say, hey, I need to get some groceries. You know what I mean?
That's why I did say gold, an ounce of silver. Say you needed groceries for your family. You wouldn't want to be giving an ounce of gold for groceries. You'd be getting completely ripped off, right? So if you have an ounce of silver and say you needed gas, let's say things really just collapse for a while until that new reset. Let's just say things get really rough and you basically, hey, I got a bunch of dollars. First of all, they're like coronavirus. We don't even take dollars. Say the grid's even down. What do you think that people are going to accept as payment for groceries or for gas or to barter? Trust me, all throughout history, I don't care how bad it's been, people have always looked at the value of gold and silver. So, I mean, you can make these arguments, but overall, it's almost there as just a safe haven. It's almost like a peace of mind. It's like, I tell people, look, if you're going to prep, don't go freaking crazy about it. Get a bunch of stuff and then just sit back and relax. You can have peace of mind, especially as a father and a husband. You know that no matter what happens, you can take care of your family. You don't have to be psycho about it and be, stockpiling for 10 years. if you just have enough to get through 2 or 3 or 4 months, that's great. And I think we all learned that with coronavirus. Now in the world, I think people are going to be like, hey, it's not just a bunch of conspiracy guys. Things can change on the flip of a switch where all of a sudden meat runs out, or we can't get groceries for, a month, And it's like, what do we do? So I think a lot of people are going to start having this mentality, and and food and water are the most important. Don't get me wrong, but have a little bit of silver, not gold. Have a bit of silver, because it might come in handy. And trust me, it's always been worth something, and people will trade for it. Trust me on that, especially when all of a sudden you start to see the true value of where silver and gold should be. But it has been manipulated for a very long time. But trust me, they can't manipulate it forever. Rome manipulated their gold and silver. They started diluting it. You notice your change in your pocket, your dimes and your quarters? Do you think there's any real metal in that? Over time, governments just dilute it. This is nothing new happens under the sun. Like Ecclesiastes says, this has happened through the test of time. Rome did it. Greece did it. They always manipulate the money, but then all of a sudden it comes crumbling down. And usually people, whether or not they go back to a gold standard, that's not what we're even discussing here. We're just saying that is real wealth. That is real money. What do you think the elite or the banks, or what do you think that they convert all their currency into? Gold. What do you think China and like if you look at all the big countries right now, and that's the crazy part. U.S. not so much, and this is where it gets really interesting. If you look at Russia, you look at China, you look at India, they have been stockpiling gold by the metric ton for decades. And the question is, what do they see coming? And again, if you start looking at the world and you're like, wait a minute, why are they stockpiling so much precious metals? I mean, we're talking huge amounts. Maybe I should get a little bit of that just for a rainy day. So that's all I'm saying is get some for a rainy day. It's literally like $18 an ounce, I think, American right now for an ounce of silver. It's like a steal of a deal. In 1980s, it was like $50. And I think the high that silver has ever been to is about $50. So you're looking at $18 right now. It's literally less than half that, of the all-time high, which, I mean, it's going to get up there. I'm not saying what price it's going to get to, but I think everyone, especially truthers, people that want to be outside of the financial matrix, need to have some precious metals. I mean, on another show, I'll get into cryptocurrency. I think that's another area where people need to look into, and no, it's not all the mark of the beast. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to this, though, but you're talking about the financial collapse and all these things happening, which I'm in total 100% agreement. But you're saying that pretty soon it will just be a complete reset, not just with the financial system, but you were mentioning before, Ian, that basically the political system will be completely reset as well, like as far as our leaders and everything, correct?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Wow.
They're saying that. I mean, that's what it's all, if the thing comes through, yeah, that's what it'll say. But I don't think they don't like to think about that because, I mean, nobody likes to think about anything anymore,
That's true. No one likes to hear when I say that we're literally headed towards a greater depression than, the 1930s. I mean, no one likes to hear that. But the reality is absolutely. And it's not just a bunch of tinfoil hat guys that are saying it. You look at some economists, you look at and you start looking even at the headlines, and they're all starting to move away that they're saying this V-shaped recovery that everyone was talking about. They're like, it's not coming, right? It's not coming. And the markets are starting to get worried and stuff. And they're just like, wait a minute. But it's like, oh, no big deal. Let's just print another $1 trillion. But then people have to wonder when they're getting all these checks, go, wait a minute. If this really, truly worked, why wouldn't the government just print money all the time? Why would we ever even need to work, right? Like, why would anyone even need to work?
But they don't think about that. They're not thinking about that at all.
They don't know where that money's coming from. And they're just like, well, the money's just coming from the government. Where do you think the government gets it? From the people. Well, where's the people going to get it, right? So you start, that's the thing. And that's why I recommend everyone look into the difference between money and currency. And this one comes to I'll send a link. I'll put a link in the description for everyone as well that's interested. It's kind of my #1 video I send to, and it's by Mike Maloney. And he's got a whole series talking about the hidden secrets of money. But when you understand the matrix of what the difference is between money and currency, all these things become really, exciting to look at. And we go, wait a minute. Now I understand the way money works. Now I understand the way currency works. That's why you're going to know 110% that we're headed towards a massive financial collapse and pain like we haven't experienced before. But it's not doom and gloom. It's not like everyone starves and everyone dies. No, it's just going to be rough. I mean, you're not going to eat out as much. People are going to hunker down. They're going to treasure things. I think families are going to be closer. I think it's going to be a period where a lot of good stuff will happen. Like you mentioned, really, spending time with your family and stuff. So I'm not even talking about where everyone dies and starves and all this. I'm just saying that in the shaking, I think that we're moving to a period of time where we're going to be reflecting for a while, before maybe the whole end takes place. It's God's going to be giving us the shaking saying, what really matters in life? Does all of this, and like you mentioned, it's amazing to me because you have to remember bread and circuses have been important for the ruling elite from day one. You know that, right? They've always had the bread and circuses for the people. They've always had the distractions. You're telling me that in all of this crazy nonsense that's going on, they're going to take out the distractions? Like sports are like number one. They've taken out sports. They're going to take out Hollywood making new movies. I mean, that's the one thing they would have said. Essential services, Hollywood keeps pumping them out. Let's keep everyone distracted and, we can indoctrinate them. So there's something supernatural going on when everything, and I mean everything, stops. I mean, a Sabbath for the whole world.
Yeah, and a Passover for the whole world.
That's what, yeah, exactly. That Passover for the whole world. That's exactly what I meant. So to me, something extraordinary is going on. I think that we can all, admit to that, and we don't all have the answers. But with what you're saying as well, I think is very fascinating. I wasn't even taking into the equation of what's going to happen with the financial collapse. But you're right. Anything goes when the system collapses, which is inevitable. I personally don't think it's this year. I think it's next year or 2022. That's what I've been kind of putting out there. Again, I could be wrong, but nothing. I do not believe that anything as far as a financial collapse will happen this year. If anything, they're going to do another huge stimulus. There's going to be some emergency thing. They're going to print another $2 trillion, and the markets are going to roar into November. So if you think Trump's going to win, number one way that he is going to win is the markets are going to be soaring in November. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I don't see so the Democrats can hold a lot of stuff up though. If that's one of the things I really think that they're trying to push is not allowing him to re-up the economy, because then he'll get credited for that.
He's in charge of the Fed though. Like the interesting thing is, about the takeover, which is a really fascinating thing when he took over, when he merged the Fed. And I don't know if you guys watch that in the news or whatever. No, I'm not saying he controls the Fed. But what's interesting about that is, I'm just telling you right now, they can do a lot of stuff and keep people in lockdown and all that's nonsense. But the one thing they can't stop Trump from doing is saying, I'm going to pass an executive order, another $2 trillion and checks for everyone. And if Trump does that and keeps everyone afloat right through the election, first of all, the stock market, when they say we're going to buy up all the bonds and we're going to buy up all the stocks, the stock market's the NASDAQ's going to go right through the roof. That's what happened the first time. The reason why it rallied the way it is and why we're like, wait a minute, there's 40 million unemployed and it's the greatest week ever in the NASDAQ. That makes no sense. You know what I mean? You're kind of like, what? This shouldn't be this way. The reason is because it was all this free money. They had nothing to lose. If it went down, they were just going to buy it again. So I think they only can do that for so long. And then we're coming to a collapse. But I personally think it's going to be next year. So my whole thing is, I think that, he's going to win. There's going to be all sorts of mayhem. It's going to do good. But then all of a sudden, the whole house of cards is going to fold on the economy into the next year. So unfortunately, Trump's going to have to weather that whole mess as well, which will be interesting to see how that all plays out. Maybe it makes a lot of sense with what you're saying, Ian, where all of a sudden there is kind of like a final reset and Trump kind of just steps down and they just start from scratch, which to me is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, for sure. They were, I try not to think about it too much because, we got to trust God because He's in control.
Joe Biden getting in is horrifying enough. All right, it's horrifying enough. Just forget financial collapse. Just Joe Biden winning. That is scary.
I don't see Joe being. I mean, he came out and said that his doctor told him he can't do any debates. So what's he going to do it from a screen like Mad Max?
I didn't know that. In America, you can legally not have any debates. Like I thought debates were part of the whole, like that was all part of the whole election cycle is like the good old debates and like letting people know who's more capable. Like you literally could actually do a full election and no debates.
I don't know. I mean, he's not doing any rallies. So, I mean, the only people who are going to vote for him are, those who hate Trump. So I don't really.
Well, they hate Trump so much they would vote for anything at this point. Anything. That's why the whole Kanye thing is very intriguing. To me, the whole Kanye thing, if it's sincere, it's a brilliant play because it will dilute the crap out of the Democrat votes. It just will. Like, if anything, that gives me a lot more hope. If he is for real and he's doing a play, he will dilute the votes like crazy because people will be like, hey, man, black guy, he doesn't like Trump either. Heck, he's a lot better than Biden. I mean, Biden doesn't know where he is half the time, right? So I'm really skeptical.
Do you remember a couple years ago when Kanye had his little flip out like on the stage and everything, and then he went to like that prison or wherever he was locked up for a while, right?
That was a hospital.
Well, whatever. He was locked up there though, wasn't he?
They put in, well, the hospital he went to is a known, like, that's where like
Treatment
Brittany
center.
goes when
he wasn't
when,
there against
when
his will. He was almost like, hey, this is good, dude. Kanye, you gotta go in here for a little bit. You're tripping.
Oh, dude. Yeah, but this is the thing. After he got out, he met with Trump, remember?
Yep.
And he told him that he said Trump and I are both dragon bloodline. And we get it, or something like that. It was some kind of weird statement about we're both dragon bloodline or something.
Kanye, like Trump and Kanye. I don't care what Kanye's saying. Trust me, they have some sort of like, they get each other. And if anything, to me, it makes so much sense from a political play for him to dilute the votes. Because quite honestly, what are the choices right now? If you hate Trump, you got Biden. But all of a sudden you got now Kanye coming in, and he's sitting there, Black Lives Matter in the sense that, like he's a black guy. I mean, heck, they'll vote in. I mean, a lot of people voted Obama in just because of his skin color, right? So to me, I mean, that's the same reason that Biden, his VP, I guarantee will be a woman, and I guarantee that it's going to be a minority. It's going to be someone of a different ethnic. It won't be a white person. It won't be a white woman. There's no way. I do not believe for a second it will be a white woman he picks for his VP. What do you guys think?
No. Nope.
So who's the one? So whoever he picks, you just look at that person and say that would be the president of the United States. I don't care what anyone said. There's no way that Biden is going to be able to make it through on any speeches, on any, like, he literally will either have a medical emergency, something will happen, or he's just going to get all his marching orders. That's why they don't care about him fumbling. They don't care about anything because they know he's not the real guy to watch. It's going to be, the power is going to be in the VP. That's kind of, there's no way that of all the people in the world, they're going to pick and rest everything on Joe Biden. No, there has to be a bigger story going on here.
You guys ever heard of a show? You guys ever heard of a show called Lone Survivor?
No.
Really?
I haven't heard of it.
So, all right. Were you familiar with the show 24?
Oh yeah, I know 24. I watched the whole thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Jack Bauer.
Yep.
Okay. Kiefer Sutherland is in a show that's got quite a bit of seasons called The Lone Survivor, and it's about some kind of attack on DC, but it wipes out like Congress, a lot of Congress, and the president dies and some other stuff. And this guy's it's called Designated Survivor. Sorry, not Lone Survivor.
Okay.
The Designated Survivor.
Oh yes. I think I started watching it and then I just didn't grip my interest and I stopped it. Isn't it the one where all of a sudden there's an assassination? It's the VP that takes over and he's just like, he's not even a VP though. He's like 5 down. He's like 6 down or something. Just random.
He's a housing development guy or something.
That's right. That's right. I have seen I've seen a few episodes. I know what show you're talking about now.
Yeah, I don't watch it. I'm just letting you know. Like, that could be another scenario too. But here's the thing: it's like, okay, we're not. This is one of those things where it's like we speculate all we want, but we don't really know.
Sure.
But what would really matter in the end, right? So we still have a commission. We're still supposed to share the gospel. These are fun conversations that you could be having
100%.
while you're talking to your neighbors.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Getting to know your neighbors when some stuff really does happen. They have someone to go to because they're like, hey, I know, who do I know, and they'll think of you. Or if they need prayer, they'll think of you.
Yeah.
And you can, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a perfect way to do that. And we don't have to guess. And I know that God will take care of us, whatever your situation looks like, whether you can prep or not.
Sure.
He's got you, man. And that's the thing. If you trust him, he's got you. He will hold you. He will sustain you.
But here's the thing, though. If he's calling you, I agree with that. But again, it's like almost like Joseph, right? When he said, "Look, there's going to be 7 years of want,
right,
and there's 7 years of playing." What I'm saying is, I agree with that. But also, if you kind of know and you got that urging, there's time to kind of prepare for the times that are coming. And being a smart steward, remember what Joseph was able to do? He was able to basically save all of Israel. I mean, it wasn't just him and his family. He literally saved the multitudes, right? So to me, when we're looking at these scenarios, we have to look at almost the big picture and say, look, man, I always look at it this way. You want to talk about giving the gospel? Let's just say the financial system collapsed and there's no food or whatever like this. Can you imagine how powerful your witness is if you're offering food to like half your neighbors? Like if you were in a position that, to me, these are the times that's when it really shines, is when we're actually being, what Jesus called us to do, like feeding the hungry and stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's like, so I look at it like, people say, oh, you should go out and feed the hungry right now. I'm like, wait a minute, if you're prepping, why don't you actually prepare for your neighbor beside you on both sides, that if things get really bad, you'd be able to help them out for maybe a month or two. I'm saying in the sense that you would have a little bit extra stored for them. To me, that is a huge deal that a lot of people don't think about. They're always thinking about like prepping for them and their family. Why not prep for basically your neighbor as well?
Yeah.
You know, because to me, that's a strong witness. I don't like that person coming in for that bowl of soup or whatever. He's sitting there listening to it 100%. He's a stand-up. You know what I mean? I make light of it, but not really, because that's really when, you know, what Jesus was about was really kind of loving on people. That's when you're really loving on people, when you're visiting people in prison and when you're, you know, taking care of the widows and all these type of things. And we always talk about this in those terms. Do you honestly believe that if you're not prepared, you're going to be taking care of anyone? You're going to be in a petrified, you know, panic mode, just taking care of your family, right? So that's what I'm saying. To me, it's smart being a good steward. And guys go, look, know the times, know the seasons, know the birth pains, that not only do I want you prepared, I want you to be at peace through that time, but also I want you to actually help others, that you're not just panicked and you're just looking internal and saying, how do I just, you know, how do I take care of my family? It's like, wouldn't it be a great thing to like, I know that my family's taken care of, and we're also in a position now to bless other people in this horrific time that we're living in, because what all three of us are saying, no matter how crazy 2020 is, it's about to get a lot more crazy and a lot darker.
Yep.
So that to me is, you know, it can be horrifying and we can be like doom and gloom, but really I think it's prudent and it's smart for us to, you know, have these discussions and, you know, have these, you know, fun discussions around that, but also, you know, knowing what's important and where to keep our focus is incredibly important. But then how do we take the things that we're seeing and apply them and help others, you know, and benefit and have a stronger witness and preach the gospel in those times? Because there's no doubt in every time of persecution, and when the church actually comes, you know, gets pressured and gets choked out, it prospers the most. All throughout history, the church has prospered the most under persecution. So you want to talk about a flourishing great awakening? It's probably going to happen under persecution.
Yep, it's going to get worse and better at the same time.
Yeah. I agree with that too.
Depending on who you are.
I do agree that, like, even though it will get worse, a lot of great, wonderful, beautiful stuff will happen. What do you think, Sampson, when it comes to that, like weighing out all the bad, you know, with all the beautiful blessings and the amazing things that will actually transpire, even in these dark times that we're moving towards?
Oh, I look at it from you know, like a biblical perspective. Whenever you saw, like, say for instance, when the Hebrew people left Egypt, right? That's some of the most pivotal miracles that happen in the first book of the, you know, in the first 4 books in Torah, right? Is you've got manna that comes out of the sky. You've got not pigeons, but they were quails that came down, striking a rock and water parting. I mean, God was with those people. And, you know, when we see this, if we move into this end times area and there is a remnant, God is going to be with those people. And you're going to see, you know, the people aren't just going to come to Christianity under persecution. They're going to get to see signs and wonders and crazy things that are going to start happening as the community of people move more towards the body, because they're being pushed together, right? We talked about this on our show it's like there's a divide happening, you know, between, you know, the line in the sand has been drawn, right? But it's like being pressed into like everybody's getting piled into an elevator, right? The closer we are together in an ecclesia, the more powerful the Holy Spirit is and works in that community. So, you know, as things start to progress and we're going to see the enemy move, God's moves are going to be much greater. And I honestly think that we're going to see miracles and, you know, amazing things happen, as I know I've seen it in my life, and little things that have happened throughout my life that God has put his hand in there, that only God could have accomplished this, you know, this thing. So I know that we're going to see that when we, you know, even if it is where we don't have a system where we can buy, sell, or trade, we may end up being called into our own Goshen. And it's something that God gives us, a little prosperous land in the middle of nowhere, and we learn how to grow food and take care of each other in a commune. I mean, I think that God has the ability to do that outside of whatever the world is doing for his chosen people. So I think it's an amazing thing. I think we're going to see a lot of amazing things and moves of God that are going to happen. In the same time, we're seeing the enemy trying to push all of the agendas and moving towards, you know, this new world, you know, agenda that he wants to move into. So God's not going to forget about us, man. He didn't set us all up for this and train us and bring us up and start works in our lives just to let us get thrown to the wolves. You know, he's going to protect us and keep us, and he needs us for a purpose. Everything that you've been through in your life has been training for a purpose that God is going to utilize for you. So it's not done. It's not right around, it's not tomorrow that this is all going to happen, but we need to be walking and as close as a relationship with the Father as we can, just for the protection's sake. I mean, you got coronavirus going around there, you got riots, you got looting. I mean, there could be all kinds of stuff that happen over these next couple of months, and you don't want to be out there in the world without the protection of the Father. That's the only thing I can stress coming up to the November elections. I mean, we can revisit this after, we find out who wins, but definitely be working on your relationship and trusting and walking in the steps that God has laid out for you. If you're walking in that path that he's laid out for you, the only thing that's going to take you off this earth is when he allows you to be taken off. The enemy has no ground when you're under the protection of the Father. And that's the most, I can say to anybody.
It's awesome. No, amen, for sure. Ian, what do you want to tell everyone in closing, just to kind of keep their mind on, and just what you think is important in these times, kind of moving forward as we move into darker times? Hello?
Did he fall asleep?
I'm not sure.
It is pretty late for Ian.
Oh, is it pretty? Oh, it's pretty late for him. Did he actually fall asleep?
I don't know. He doesn't manage to make it through all of our shows.
Man, that would be a first. That would be a first. Someone falls asleep during the show. Okay, there you are.
Sorry, my battery died in my Bluetooth.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I thought I would have a first on the show that actually someone actually fell asleep. I'm like, I didn't think that Sampson talked that long. It's all good. No, I was just saying in closing, like, if you want to just to kind of share anything you think is on your heart, what's important, just kind of put it out there for people, and then we'll kind of start wrapping up the show here. But I just thought it was important that you could kind of just speak your heart to people as times get tougher, they get darker. Basically keeping their eyes set above, but also what can they do in the meantime as we move closer, I guess, to November. I guess the pivotal point now we're all looking at now is November.
Yeah, I would say the first and foremost, it is to make sure that you're in covenant with God. Make sure that you are doing what the Scripture says that covenant looks like, because we know what the Scripture says about trees that bear no fruit, that no good fruit, right? So make sure that you got your I's dotted, right? So go to the Scriptures, and if you need help with that, we're here to encourage you guys. We do a show on Wednesdays. SITREP, it's a Bible study / update from the battlefield. We give you encouraging tips. We're putting out some resources for you. We have a Facebook group, SITREP Resistance, where we're able to share in like a community type setting with like-minded believers. And it's not so much conspiracy, it's more uplifting Scripture and how to navigate through this with kingdom mindset, kingdom eyes, right? The lost is the most important part of this, right? God's not gonna, the personal relationship too that's the whole key. You're not getting saved by your amount of knowledge that and there's no door that you can navigate through the conspiracy realm to reach on your own, unless that's Christ. That's the only truth, the living truth. So, Jesus Christ. I'll make sure that's real clear. But that's the thing, find some good community around you. There's brothers and sisters online that can coach you and talk to you. I'm one of them. Aaron's one of them. Robbie's one of them. Reach out. But that's pretty much it, man. Pray. The Holy Spirit will direct us. Everybody is unsure right now what the heck is happening. So the only thing I can say is grab a lifeline and hold on, man.
Yeah, just grab a lifeline and hold on. It's going to be a fun ride. There's no doubt about it. It seems like when all of a sudden we think that things are kind of calming down, and it's like, okay, I think, we're kind of done that. It's just something new kind of pops its head up, and away we go. So who knows what's going to happen? Yeah. It just seems like in some ways, it honestly, I know, you both have said, look, a lot of this stuff doesn't surprise you, but quite honestly, some of the stuff seems like we're in the twilight zone. It really does. Just how quickly it's pivoted. Where these conversations are being had, and they're being had on like just a incredible frequency, and some of the discussions that you're having. I mean, I just didn't think that it would happen so fast when people are thinking, let's not just defund the police, let's abolish it. And you're like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it's like the city council just voted to abolish the police, and you're like, what? Is this really going on? Like, are these actually things that people are chanting? They're actually becoming reality this quick? And you're kind of like, Wow, talk about an escalation. So, I mean, in ways, I'm actually shocked by a lot of stuff that's going on.
It's what's kind of funny, Robbie. I think you'd crack up about this. So I live literally on the street that separates two counties, and one of them is the major city of Indiana, right? Indianapolis, which is Marion County. I literally live on the road that divides the two counties. In Marion County, you are mandated to wear a mask anywhere in public. So literally, if I walk out my front door, I cannot have a mask on. But if I cross my street, I have to put a mask on because I'll die of coronavirus. Like, it is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, man. I don't know. It's like everything is like that right now. Everything is so contradictory, and there's so much hypocrisy in everything that's going on. But I think that's part of the chaos. I honestly think this is exactly what it is, because you can't put your finger on anything. And then even for the people that can't, when they go to the truther community, like we were talking about earlier, and say, hey, what's going on here? We're going, I don't know, because there's just too much, there's so much misinformation out there. There's so much of this going on, and there's so much conflicting information. You have no idea what's going on. I think it's purposefully done this way. It's meant to put everybody into chaos. Mm-hmm. This is part of the ritual, the ritual like thing that they're bringing us into, this kind of like, it's almost like MK Ultra, and we've talked about this before. They put us through. It's like going through a ritual torture right now, where they're on a mass scale. They're putting everybody through this chaos, and it's part of this whole thing that we're talking about, of this bringing in this new system, and they have to put us through this. But as Christians, we can either be a part of it and be enveloped by it, or we can sit back and trust in the promises that God has given us, that he's going to take care of us, protect us, mm-hmm. and we need to go to him for shelter in these times of chaos. I mean, it's crazy. You can just look out and watch everything that's going on, and it's entertaining at times, just how crazy the people who are under the influence of everything that's going on are acting toward each other. I was at a store earlier and literally watched this lady yelling at a young guy who went into a Lowe's store, which is a like hardware store here in the States. Mm-hmm. And she's yelling at him because he walked in and didn't have a mask on. It's just like, I mean, how crazy has this gotten? Like,
I was actually on the phone. I stopped in an A&W and I was having a quick snack. Anyways, I was on the phone with Patricia Steer. All of a sudden I walked out. I guess I walked out the wrong door. I kind of noticed because I was on the phone with her, and all of a sudden I heard some people yelling, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I walked out. Guy came running out of the restaurant. I'm like, at my car already. He's like, you can't use that door. I'm like, dude, chill out. Yeah. Like, I'm like, chill out. Like, I was like, I could not believe they ran out of A&W and they're pointing their finger. This one guy's pointing it and he's like, you can't go out that door. I'm like, whoa. And I mean, there wasn't that many people there at all. Like, it was just quiet. I'm like, it didn't matter, but they were just like, you didn't do it the right way. And I'm like, man, chill out, chill out.
They put arrows in our grocery stores, man. And if you try to go down the aisle the wrong way, they shame you.
Dude, there's arrows. There's arrows in the washrooms, dude. There's arrows everywhere, man. They're going ballistic with the arrows. They're putting arrows everywhere. It's like supermarkets everywhere. Like, walk this way. This is the way you can walk. I know it's so silly, but anyways,
it's just so crazy.
I just hope that you guys. I told you. I said, before the show, I wanted to have a very safe and fun show for the whole family. So I really hope that you wore your masks for the show. I really do hope that you had your masks on, because I want this to be safe, for everyone. Because I'll tell you, this thing's airborne. It's actually traveling now. The WHO just came out with information to say it travels through Ethernet and Wi-Fi. All right.
Well, yeah,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's going through Wi-Fi now. Yeah, so that just came in, actually. CDC's actually looking into it, but they're actually starting to jump on board. They're like, guys, it's worse than what we thought. It actually goes through Wi-Fi and Ethernet. So it will actually go through HTTP and actually FTP. So we're not safe on any type of devices that we use as far as the computer.
Well, I tell you what, I don't trust, Bill Gates and his Windows with viruses. I'm not going to trust him with, anything else he puts out there.
Yeah. So. No pun intended, right? the virus in Windows and the virus. Yeah, we didn't get a chance to get into old Bill Gates, and there's so much. That's the thing. It's just like, what you could do a show on just one small thing, and there's so much going on right now. What's interesting too is I was talking about this the other day. Notice one topic that has just completely gone by the wayside. No one's talking about at all anymore. 5G. I mean, it is just like no one talks about it. It was like the biggest thing when coronavirus started. It was like coronavirus. It's because of 5G, and that's why people are getting sick. And remember, it was like the whole connection. Yep. Everyone's getting sick. That's 5G. But then try to look around right now. No one's talking about 5G. And you're kind of like, that went away real quick. I mean, that was like, life or death, It's just interesting how things are pivoting. And you mentioned that stuff is coming out. They're purposely, I think, just flooding truthers with so much stuff that basically, short attention spans, people don't even know what they're on to the next week. I mean, now it's all Wayfair and Amazon, and now I think they're finding stuff now with Walmart. So now, all three chains or whatever are now, smuggling children in cabinets and pillows. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's just interesting. We know this stuff goes on. We know there's a dark world out there, but sometimes you got to be like, really? They're going to just do it through that? Really? I mean, maybe, but I mean, you guys have been on, you've been on the case, for 24 hours. You know what I mean? You've been on, and where have you done most of the stuff, memes that are coming out that you're sharing with everyone? That's, I guess, really problematic for me. What I've seen is when this whole thing happened with the coronavirus, the memes just started piling out. Like somebody was sitting in their basement or some factory where they're just pumping these things out. And there was like so much stuff that was getting revealed and people were just sharing everywhere. And I know we've talked about this, both the Ian and Sampson, how we were kind of just shaking our head going, oh no. There was so much stuff that was getting shared, and you're kind of like, guys, there's no truth to that at all. Zero. Like, it's actually embarrassing that you're actually sharing this and saying, aha, smoking gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually put up a video on April 4th called "Have You Been Infected?" and it's about meme magic, viral magic, and it's pretty good. It's real short, about 11 minutes, but go sub my channel and watch it.
And like you guys are both both in the same state, right?
No, we're in two different states.
Okay, because I was going to say you say mem and Ian says meme. So I just I didn't know that the two states have different ways of saying the word.
Yeah, we're all kinds of messed up around here. That's Midwest. That's the Midwest.
To be fair, I say Mimi.
Mimi. That's a new one. I like that one. Mimi.
I'm kidding.
Mimi.
I've never Googled it to see how the appropriate.
Well, quite honestly, when Sampson when Sampson said mem, it's the first time I've ever heard that in my whole life. I've never heard anyone ever say mem. So I'm like, man, he is in the deep south, or he's somewhere. I don't know where he's at, but he's somewhere. He's somewhere. I got to find out where that guy is because he's at a point where I haven't even talked to someone that deep. You know what I mean?
He's in India, no place.
It's like a new language or something. So, no, guys, it's been a real pleasure having you guys on. Honestly, if everyone check out, the links are in the description. Check out their show. They're on, I think, episode 27 that's coming up next week, you said?
Yep.
And these guys, I mean,
live at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays.
Yeah, and they go deep.
We got Joe Biden next week. So.
Oh, Joe Biden. You guys cannot miss Joe Biden. I mean, he's going to be on. I don't know if you heard, but we did the big thing when I was talking to Tony and Jake, and Tony came up with the whole thing. They're going to do a segment on their show called, I think, Biding His Time or something. Anyway, we started laughing so hard, but he's going to do a thing where all of a sudden they're going to be like, and now it's time for Bible reading with Joe Biden. And he's going to be like, in the beginning, you know the thing. You know it.
Yeah.
So they're going to start a little segment with Joe Biden. I thought it was the funniest thing. I actually kind of gave them the idea. And then they're like, great, now we're stuck with it. And I'm like, you guys got to run with it. It'll be so funny. Bible reading with Joe Biden. And he can never even do a verse. He's just, you know the thing. You know it. And Tony will do the voice. So it's going to be funny, right?
Oh, yeah.
But no, that's awesome. You guys have that episode coming on. And again, your individual channels, if you want to plug them real quick and let everyone know, we'll start with Ian and then we'll end with Sampson as far as your individual channels as well.
Yeah, the individual channel, I'm The Holy Hand Grenade on YouTube and BitChute.
Yeah, it's not The Holy Hand Grenade, it's The. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It's T-H-E. It's T-H-E. Yeah. You said the. That will throw people out. I actually worked for a Christian store that was called The Christian Store, and it was T-H-E-E. So people might type in T-H-E-E.
No, it's not the. It's not T-H-E-E. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
But it is the Holy Hand Grenade.
Oh, there we go. The Holy Hand Grenade. That's on YouTube. You can check out his channel. And then, Sampson, you can kind of give your plug for your channel on YouTube.
Yeah. And then the Holy Hand Grenade is where we actually do the SITREP live.
Yep.
And then it's shared a couple different places. We mirror it on different locations. And one of them's in my channel, which is the Omega Chronicles TV. So I've just that's just my personal one. And then do you want to give out your email for the 242 Ministries, Ian?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you guys are interested in doing the house church thing, we got lots of resources for you. All you got to do is email us at mission242protonmail.com. So that's all we're going to do right there. We don't have the website up yet, so just make inquiries at that, mission242 at Proton Mail, and we will hook you up with the resources and everything that you need to do your, or we'll be interested in hearing what you're interested in, giving you some ideas, telling you about what the plan is. And this is like a grassroots thing, and it's really, I mean, we're doing our first block party type thing in Aaron's neighborhood for this, really. And when is it? Next weekend?
25th.
Be awesome. You guys will have like a great party there. You can hang out. You can like basically, share your memes with everyone and stuff at the party. Yeah. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah. You should call it the mem block party. You should call it the mem block party.
Well, it's a masquerade. It's a
masquerade.
It's a masquerade ball.
It's a masquerade ball. I think they're just kidding, but yeah, it'll be a good time. But yeah, check out their information. And like I said, at the Holy Hand Grenade, that's where the show, I guess, premieres each week. And they're on episode 27. Link is in the description. You can check more about them. Guys, it's been a real pleasure having you on. We'll definitely get you back, maybe before the election, but definitely right afterwards. We'll be talking right after the election. I'll tell you that. I'll get like a big panel because we're either going to be talking. Well, it'll be interesting to see what we're going to be saying after that election. It's going to be probably one of the most profound elections in our lifetime. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be living a whole nother life in a couple months from now, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
At this rate.
It's going to be pretty extraordinary. So, well, thanks everyone for tuning in to Celebrate Truth Radio. This is episode 72 with the 2020 deep dive with Sampson and Ian. And again, it's been a real pleasure. Blessings, everyone. We'll talk again next week. Same time, same place. Blessings all.
See ya.